Look around at the world today. We're all searching for something, aren't we? In the noise of daily life, with its constant pressures and unexpected setbacks, there's a deep, almost universal yearning for a sense of inner stability, for a kind of mental resilience that can't be shaken by external events. We try countless methods, read endless advice, hoping to find that unbreakable core within ourselves. But what if the most powerful map to this inner fortitude wasn't a new discovery at all, but a path laid out centuries ago? What if the key to becoming mentally invincible was already written in the private thoughts of a Roman emperor, grappling with his own humanity nearly 2,000 years ago? Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire from his tent during a military campaign, penned these words to himself, a quiet reminder that echoes through time: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the profound, timeless promise of Stoicism. It isn't a philosophy of cold, emotionless detachment, but a practical operating system for the human soul, designed to forge an unbreakable mind from the raw material of everyday life. This journey we're beginning today isn't about historical theory. It's about uncovering the principles that allow ordinary people to cultivate extraordinary mental strength. We are about to explore how you can build what the Stoics called an inner citadel, a fortress of calm and clarity that remains standing no matter what storms rage outside. We'll walk through foundational ideas like the crucial dichotomy of control, learning to sharply distinguish between what is in your power and what is not. We'll investigate the daily practice of virtue, turning abstract ideals into concrete actions. We'll see how embracing obstacles rather than fighting them can become your greatest source of fuel. This is the path from fragility to invincibility. So let me ask you a question, one that might just change the way you see every difficulty you've ever faced. What if your greatest challenges, your most frustrating setbacks, and your deepest worries were not barriers to your peace, but the very raw material required to build your mental fortitude? What if everything happening to you was precisely what you needed to become stronger, wiser, and truly unbreakable? This is the transformative power of the Stoic path, and it is a journey open to anyone willing to take the first step. The first step to an unbreakable mind is knowing what is truly yours to command. This is the bedrock of Stoic wisdom, a principle so foundational that the philosopher Epictetus began his entire manual for life, the Enchiridion, with it. He wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." This is the dichotomy of control, the essential mental sorting exercise that separates the chaos of the world into two distinct categories. On one side, you have your inner world, your thoughts, your judgments, your intentions, and your voluntary actions. This realm is your sovereign territory. It is where your absolute authority lies. On the other side lies everything else: the weather, the stock market, traffic jams, what your boss thinks of you, whether you get the promotion, even the health of your own body. These are externals, and while you can influence them, you do not have final command over them. The entire architecture of mental resilience is built upon this simple yet profound distinction. When we fail to make it, we exhaust ourselves in a futile battle, trying to command the ocean's tides with our bare hands. We invest our emotional energy in outcomes we can never guarantee, and in doing so, we hand over the keys to our inner peace to forces beyond our reach. Consider a modern scenario everyone can relate to, being stuck in an unmoving traffic jam. You have an important meeting, your schedule is crumbling, and your stress levels are rising. In that moment, what is truly within your control? You cannot will the cars ahead to vanish. You cannot control the accident that caused the delay or the timing of the traffic lights. These are externals, firmly in the category of things not up to us. What is within your power, however, is your reaction. You can choose to fume, to pound the steering wheel, to curse the situation, and allow frustration to flood your system. Or you can acknowledge the reality of the delay, use the time to listen to an audiobook, practice some deep breathing, or mentally prepare for your meeting. The traffic jam itself is neutral. It is your judgment about the traffic jam. This is a catastrophe that is happening to me, that creates the suffering. By shifting your focus exclusively to your sphere of command, your breath, your attitude, your choice of how to use the time, you reclaim your power. You move from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active agent of your own state of mind. This is not about suppressing emotion. It is about exercising discernment. It is the difference between being a leaf blown by every wind and being the tree, firmly rooted, whose leaves may rustle but whose core remains unshaken. The practice is to constantly ask yourself this clarifying question, especially in moments of distress. Is this thing that is upsetting me within my control, or is it not? If it is not, the Stoic response is to release it, to accept its nature as an external event, and to redirect all your effort and attention to what you can control, namely, your response to it. This is the discipline that Epictetus spoke of, the training that builds mental muscle. So, let's make this personal right now. Take a mental inventory of your last week. Can you identify 3 things that happened that were completely outside your sphere of control? Perhaps it was a last-minute change to a project plan from your manager, a critical comment from a stranger online, or an unexpected bill arriving in the mail. Now go a layer deeper. How did you respond? Did you pour energy into resisting the unchangeable? Or did you, even for a moment, pivot to focus on your own judgment and your next right action? This simple act of reflection is the very practice that begins to forge an unbreakable mind, one conscious choice at a time. When a powerful negative thought enters your mind, what happens next? Do you feel as though you have become that thought, completely identified with its message? Or are you able to simply step back and observe it as a mental event passing through? This crucial distinction lies at the heart of the next Stoic practice for building an unbreakable mind, a skill the ancient philosophers called prosoch, or vigilant attention. It is the disciplined art of creating cognitive distance between your core self and the constant stream of your impressions. Imagine standing on the bank of a wide, fast-flowing river. The water rushes by, carrying all sorts of debris, leaves, branches, even the occasional log. Your thoughts and emotions are like that debris. You have a fundamental choice in that moment. You can jump into the turbulent current, grabbing onto a negative thought and being pulled underwater by its emotional force, or you can remain on the bank, simply watching as each item floats past. The Stoics taught that our initial, raw impressions are not facts. They are merely suggestions presented to our rational faculty for approval. The philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius constantly practiced this in his private writings. He would remind himself to strip away the story he was telling himself about an event and see the thing itself, plain and unadorned. In one passage, he advises objective judgment now, at this very moment. Unselfish action now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance of all external events now, at this very moment. That's all you need. This is the essence of the observer mindset. It is that objective judgment applied to your own inner world. It is the capacity to notice, for instance, the initial surge of anxiety before a presentation without immediately fusing with it and declaring "I am an anxious person." Instead, you learn to note a feeling of anxiety is present. This slight shift in language creates a world of psychological space. It transforms the emotion from something that controls you into something you are experiencing, something you can investigate and manage with reason. A wonderfully practical way to cultivate this is through a modern psychological technique that aligns perfectly with this ancient wisdom, often called thought labeling. The next time a harsh, self-critical thought arises, such as "I'm going to fail at this," you mentally intervene with a simple prefix. You say to yourself, "I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail at this." This might seem like a small, almost trivial linguistic trick, but its effect is profound. By labeling the thought as a thought, you are categorizing it. You are no longer the failure. You are a person currently experiencing a particular mental narrative about potential failure. You have created a gap between your identity and the passing mental weather. This gap is your zone of freedom. It is in that space that your rational mind can now step in and ask the Stoic questions. Is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is this within my control? From the riverbank, you can watch the log of "I'm a failure" float by without feeling compelled to jump on and ride it to a place of despair. This practice of detached observation is what prevents our minds from being hijacked. Without it, a single spark of worry can ignite a forest fire of catastrophic thinking. With it, you contain the spark, you acknowledge its presence, you understand its nature, and you choose not to feed it with more combustible fuel. So, to bring this from principle to practice, bring to mind one specific, recurring negative thought that has been a familiar, unwelcome guest in your mind. Perhaps it's a thought like "I'm not good enough for this role," or "people will find out I'm a fraud," or "this situation is going to be a disaster." For this coming week, your task is not to fight this thought, nor to believe it, but simply to become its most curious observer. Each time it appears, gently note its arrival. Ah, there is the "I'm not good enough" story again. Watch it with calm curiosity, as if you were a scientist studying a fascinating natural phenomenon. How does it feel in your body? What usually triggers it? Does its power lessen when you simply observe it without resistance? This is the daily training that builds the mental muscle of the observer, the part of you that remains calm and clear, no matter what thoughts or feelings are flowing through you. Amor Fati is not passive resignation. It is the active embrace of every facet of your fate. This powerful phrase, which translates to a love of one's fate, was championed by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, yet its spirit resonates perfectly with the core of Stoic acceptance. It's the radical decision to not merely tolerate the unexpected twists and turns of life, but to welcome them, to see them as essential threads in the unique tapestry of your existence. This is where mental resilience transforms from a defensive posture into a dynamic, forward-moving force. The Stoics understood that fighting reality is a battle we are guaranteed to lose, draining our energy and breaking our spirit. Acceptance, in their view, was not about giving up. It was about waking up to what is actually happening and then choosing to find the opportunity within it. It is the ultimate alchemy of the mind, turning the lead of adversity into the gold of character. Consider the historical example of Seneca the Younger. A prominent statesman and philosopher in ancient Rome, Seneca was suddenly accused of adultery with the emperor's niece, a charge almost certainly fabricated for political reasons. The sentence was exile. He was ripped from his life of influence and luxury in Rome and sent to the remote, barren island of Corsica for 8 long years. Imagine the sheer devastation, the injustice, the temptation to descend into bitterness and despair. Yet, in his writings from that period, we see the practice of Amor Fati in action. He did not waste his years raging against the emperor or mourning his lost status. Instead, he accepted his new reality as his fate. He used the isolation and silence of exile not as a prison, but as a studio. It was there that he produced some of his most profound philosophical works, deepening his understanding of nature and the human condition. The setback of exile became the setup for a legacy of wisdom that would outlive the empire that condemned him. He later wrote, "A setback has often cleared the way for greater prosperity." For Seneca, exile wasn't an interruption of his life's path. It became his path, the very circumstance that allowed for a different, perhaps even more meaningful kind of growth. This is the essence of the Stoic twist. The obstacle is not in the way, the obstacle is the way. When you practice loving your fate, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as the protagonist of your own story. A story where every event, especially the difficult ones, has a role to play in your development. It transforms a career setback into a nudge toward a more authentic path, a broken relationship into a lesson in self-reliance and discernment, a period of illness into a forced retreat that teaches you the value of health and presence. The energy you would have spent on resentment is suddenly freed up and redirected into creative adaptation and growth. To begin weaving this armor of acceptance into your own life, try this simple evening practice. At the end of each day, as you review what transpired, identify just one event that did not go according to your plan. It could be something small, like a cancelled plan, or something more significant, like a frustrating work delay. Now, instead of filing it away as a nuisance or a failure, consciously reframe it. Ask yourself, how could this unforeseen event be a necessary part of my journey? What might it be preparing me for? Perhaps that cancelled plan gave you the quiet evening you didn't realize you needed to recharge. Maybe that work delay is forcing a more careful and ultimately more successful approach. This isn't about inventing silver linings, but about genuinely searching for the function of the event in the larger narrative of your life. Take a moment now to look back on your own past. Can you identify a difficulty, a heartbreak, or a failure that you now, with the benefit of hindsight, see as beneficial in some way? Perhaps it taught you a critical lesson, steered you away from a wrong path, or revealed a strength you never knew you possessed. That challenging chapter in your past wasn't a mistake. It was the raw material that helped shape the person you are today. Amor Fati is the decision to recognize that truth not just in retrospect, but in the fiery heart of the present moment, building a mind that is truly invincible because it has learned to find fuel in everything life offers. Comfort is the enemy of growth. The ancient Stoics understood that a life dedicated solely to the pursuit of ease was a life primed for fragility. They actively built resilience by willingly seeking out small, manageable hardships, a practice that might seem counterintuitive to our modern sensibilities, but is absolutely foundational to forging an unbreakable mind. This is the discipline of voluntary discomfort, and it is crucial to see it not as an act of masochism or self-punishment, but as a form of training, a psychological vaccination against the inevitable adversities of life. Think of it like this: if you only ever lift weights that are light and easy, your muscles will never grow stronger. In fact, they will atrophy, becoming weak and vulnerable. Your mind operates on the very same principle. By deliberately stepping outside your comfort zone and exposing yourself to minor strains and inconveniences, you are not suffering for its own sake. You are performing reps for your resilience, strengthening your mental and emotional fibers so that when a genuine crisis strikes, you do not shatter. You have already built the fortitude to handle it. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man of immense wealth who could have insulated himself from every discomfort, regularly practiced this. He would deliberately wear shabby clothing, sleep on a hard bed, and eat plain, simple food for periods of time. He explained the reasoning with powerful clarity. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" He was conducting a drill. By voluntarily experiencing a lower standard of living, he was proving to himself that his happiness and peace were not dependent on external luxuries. He was immunizing himself against the fear of loss. Another great Stoic teacher, Musonius Rufus, took this idea even further, arguing that comfort itself could be a trap. He taught that luxury makes a person weak in both body and spirit, while hardship and effort build strength and endurance. He famously said, "How, indeed, could a person immediately become temperate if he only knew pleasure and had never experienced pain?" His point was that you cannot truly master your desires if you have never practiced denying them. You cannot know your own capacity for endurance if you have never tested your limits. This practice builds what the Stoics poetically called the inner citadel, a fortress of character that remains standing even when the outer walls of your life are under siege. It's the unshakable core of self that knows from direct experience that you can handle more than you think. In our modern world, the opportunities for this kind of training are everywhere, though they often look different from ancient examples. It could be as simple as choosing to take a cold shower in the morning instead of a warm one. That initial shock of cold is not pleasant, but in that moment you are faced with a choice. Your body screams to turn it off, to retreat to comfort, but when you consciously choose to stay, to breathe through the discomfort, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious: I am in command here. My comfort does not dictate my actions. My will is stronger than my momentary feelings. Another modern parallel might be intentionally taking a more difficult, unfamiliar route to work or to a regular destination. This isn't about efficiency, it's about practicing adaptability. You are deliberately placing yourself in a situation where your automatic pilot is switched off, where you have to pay closer attention, navigate uncertainty, and remain calm if you take a wrong turn. You are training your mind to stay flexible and solution-oriented when things don't go according to the easiest plan. This fortification of your inner citadel means that when a real storm hits, a sudden job loss, a serious health diagnosis, a personal betrayal, you are not encountering the sensation of hardship for the first time. You have a deep, embodied memory of enduring discomfort and coming out the other side. You have already faced smaller versions of fear, uncertainty, and physical aversion, and you have a practiced protocol for navigating them. The shock is lessened, the panic is muted, and your capacity for clear, reasoned action is dramatically increased. So, let's bring this from a powerful ancient idea into a tangible action you can take right now. Look at your day ahead, at the small comforts and routines that make life easy. What is one small comfort you can voluntarily give up today to strengthen your resolve? Perhaps it's that second cup of coffee you don't really need, choosing water instead. Maybe it's taking the stairs instead of the elevator. It could be leaving your phone behind during your lunch break, embracing a few moments of genuine solitude without digital distraction. The specific act is less important than the conscious intention behind it. In that small act of voluntary choice, you are not depriving yourself. You are investing in your own mental resilience, brick by brick, building the inner citadel that no external event can ever breach. What if you actively and deliberately spent a few minutes each day imagining the loss of what you value most, your career, your health, the people you love? To our modern minds, conditioned to avoid negative thoughts at all costs, this sounds like a recipe for anxiety, a dangerous invitation to manifest our worst fears. But to the Stoics, this was one of the most powerful and liberating mental exercises available to humanity. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it stands as a profound paradox at the heart of building an unbreakable mind. This is not the practice of worry, which is a passive, fearful fretting about things that might happen. Worry is a chaotic storm that leaves you drenched and disoriented. Premeditatio Malorum, in stark contrast, is a controlled and deliberate fire drill for the soul. It is the conscious, systematic visualization of potential adversity, not to scare yourself, but to inoculate yourself against the shock and devastation of fortune's inevitable turns. The great Stoic teacher Seneca put this practice at the center of a tranquil life. He advised in his letters to his friend Lucilius that we should remind ourselves daily of the fragility of our blessings. He wrote, "You may expect that to happen to you which you know can happen to any man. The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." He wasn't suggesting we live in a state of paranoid dread. He was teaching us to live with clear-eyed realism about the nature of the world. Everything we have, our jobs, our comfortable homes, our loving relationships, is on loan from fate. None of it is a permanent possession. By mentally rehearsing the return of these gifts, we accomplish two transformative things. First, we dramatically reduce the sting of attachment. When you have already, in the safe theater of your mind, played out the scene of losing your job, the actual event, should it occur, loses its element of total surprise and catastrophic power. You have already visited that emotional landscape. You have already felt the initial panic, and crucially, you have already seen yourself moving through it, adapting and finding a way forward. This prior mental rehearsal means you are not starting from zero when faced with the real thing. You have a cognitive and emotional map for the territory of loss. Let's make this immediately practical with a guided example. Find a quiet moment, close your eyes, and bring to mind something of professional significance that you deeply value. Perhaps it's your current position, a project you've poured your heart into, or the respect of your colleagues. Now, vividly imagine that it is gone. Picture the moment you receive the news, a brief, formal email, a meeting with your manager. See the words, hear the tone of voice, feel the initial lurch in your stomach, the flush of heat, the wave of disbelief. Do not shy away from these sensations, sit with them. Now move forward in your mental timeline. See yourself the next day, waking up. What do? You get out of bed, you make a cup of coffee, you breathe, you begin to assess the situation. You think about updating your resume, reaching out to your network. You realize that while the setback is real and painful, your core capacity to act, to think, to persevere remains completely intact. The you that exists beneath the job title is still there, undiminished. By walking through this scenario, you have done something extraordinary. You have separated the event, the job loss, from your identity and your ultimate survival. You have proven to yourself that you can endure it. This is the very essence of mental preparedness. The second, and perhaps more immediate, benefit of this practice is the explosive surge of gratitude it creates for the present moment. This is the beautiful, counterintuitive magic of Premeditatio Malorum. By mentally removing the people and things you love, even for a few moments, you are granted the gift of seeing them again as if for the first time. When you open your eyes after imagining the loss of a loved one, the simple fact of their existence in the world feels like a miracle. The house you imagined losing suddenly feels not like a burden of mortgage payments, but like a profound shelter. The healthy body you took for granted becomes a marvel of function and ability. The Stoic practice does not breed a gloomy pessimism. It cultivates a fierce, vibrant, and profound appreciation for the now. It pulls you out of the trance of taking things for granted and places you directly into a state of active, joyful participation in your own life. So, let's anchor this ancient technique with a final, personal reflection. Bring your attention to one specific, valued aspect of your life right now. It could be a relationship, your physical health, your creative work, or the simple freedom you have this evening. Now, for just a moment, visualize it gone. Let the image form, sit with the feeling of its absence, then release the thought and return to the present. Look around. What do you see now that you didn't fully appreciate just moments ago? What details seem sharper, more precious? This immediate shift in perception, from taking things for granted to holding them in grateful awareness, is a direct superpower for happiness and the cornerstone of a mind that cannot be broken by the fear of loss. There is a fundamental Stoic truth that, once understood, can completely reshape your relationship with the world around you. It's a principle so powerful that it serves as the very gateway to emotional freedom, and it was perfectly captured by the Emperor Marcus Aurelius when he wrote, "You take things you can't control and define them as good or bad." And so when a bad thing happens or a good thing fails to happen, you blame the gods and feel victimized. This gets to the absolute heart of the matter. It is not the event itself that disturbs our peace, but the judgment we stamp upon it in that crucial, fleeting moment of perception. The Stoics had a precise term for this decisive mental act. They called it the act of assent. This is the doctrine of assent, and mastering it is perhaps the most critical skill for building an unbreakable mind. Think of your mind as a courtroom. An event occurs, let's say, a critical email from a colleague. This event enters the courtroom as a piece of raw evidence, an initial impression. It is neutral data. But then, almost instantly, a prosecutor stands up and presents a case. This email is an attack, the prosecutor argues. It shows they don't respect you. This is a disaster for your reputation. The act of assent is the moment you, as the judge, slam your gavel and declare, "I agree, the prosecution's case is correct." By giving your assent to that initial, often catastrophic interpretation, you have just authorized your own emotional distress. The anger, the anxiety, the defensiveness you feel are not caused by the email's text on the screen. They are the direct consequence of the judgment you have just ratified as truth. This is the profound insight that Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers of freedom, sought to impart. In his discourses, he explained this process with stunning clarity. Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them. He was pointing to this exact mechanism. The external event, the thing, is powerless until we grant it power through our assent. The gap between the initial impression and our assent is the space of our ultimate liberty. It is in that tiny, often unconscious pause that our power to choose resides. The key to mental invincibility, then, is not to stop having initial impressions. That's impossible, but to become the conscious, deliberate judge who questions the prosecutor before issuing a ruling. This is where we can introduce an immensely practical application, a technique we can call the pause and reassess protocol. The next time you are faced with a triggering event, something that sends an immediate jolt of anger, fear, or hurt through your system, your first and most important task is to consciously create a pause. It might only be a single breath, but in that space, you interrupt the automatic chain reaction. You step back from the edge of the emotional cliff. Then, in that newly created space, you ask two simple but transformative Stoic questions. First, is this event in its entirety within my control? The content of the email, the tone of the colleague's voice, the fact that the event happened at all, these are almost certainly not within your control. They belong to the category of externals. Acknowledging this immediately begins to drain the situation of its perceived personal power over you. The second question is even more potent. Is my initial judgment about this event helpful? Is the story you're telling yourself that this is a catastrophe, a personal insult, a sign of impending failure actually serving you? Is it leading you toward a rational, virtuous response, or is it simply fueling a fire of reactive emotion that will cloud your judgment and likely make the situation worse? By questioning the utility of your judgment, you shift from being a passive recipient of emotion to an active strategist for your own well-being. Let's make this concrete with a modern scenario. Imagine you're in a team meeting and you present an idea you're genuinely excited about. A teammate immediately dismisses it with a curt "that will never work" and moves on. The initial impression is a sharp sting of rejection. The automatic, unconscious assent might sound like this: he's trying to undermine me. He doesn't value my contributions. I must not be as smart as I thought. This is humiliating. If you assent to that narrative, your entire emotional state shifts. You feel deflated, resentful, and defensive for the rest of the meeting. Your ability to contribute further is compromised. Now rewind the tape and apply the pause and reassess technique. The comment happens, you feel the sting, but you take a breath. You ask yourself, is his comment within my control? No, it is not. You then ask, is my initial judgment that he's undermining me and that I'm incompetent a helpful one? Probably not. It only leads to suffering and inaction. From this calmer, more objective vantage point, alternative judgments become available. Perhaps your teammate is under immense pressure and spoke without thinking. Maybe he genuinely sees a fatal flaw in the idea that, while poorly communicated, could actually help you improve it. Perhaps his comment has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with his own preoccupations. By withholding your immediate assent from the worst-case interpretation, you free yourself to choose a more useful and likely more accurate judgment. You can then respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness, saying something like, I'd be interested to hear more about your concerns so I can understand your perspective better. This single shift in your internal judgment transforms the entire dynamic, turning a potential conflict into an opportunity for collaboration and demonstrating a level of emotional resilience that is the mark of a truly strong mind. To truly integrate this, take a moment to look back on your own recent experiences. Can you identify one specific event from the last few days where your emotional reaction was intense? A moment of frustration in traffic, a sharp word with a loved one, a wave of anxiety about a future obligation. Now replay that event in your mind, but this time focus on the judgment you assented to in that moment. What was the story you told yourself about what was happening? Now experiment with a different possibility. How would your emotional state have shifted if you had assented to a different, more measured judgment? If you had decided that the traffic was merely an inconvenience and not a personal injustice, would the frustration have been so consuming? If you had judged your loved one's comment as a poorly expressed worry rather than a malicious attack, would the conversation have taken a different turn? This act of retrospective analysis is not about self-criticism. It is about training your inner judge. Every time you consciously re-evaluate a past assent, you are strengthening your ability to choose more wisely in the future, building a mind that remains the master of its own judgments and therefore the master of its own peace. True courage, in the Stoic sense, is not the absence of fear but the conscious choice to act in accordance with what is right and virtuous even when fear is present. It is the will to move forward despite the trembling in your hands or the knot in your stomach. This is a crucial distinction that separates the courageous individual from the merely reckless one. Recklessness is action born from ignorance, a lack of foresight, or an overinflated sense of self that blinds a person to real danger. Courage, however, is a virtue grounded in wisdom. It sees the risk, understands the potential consequences, and yet decides that the moral necessity of the action outweighs the personal discomfort or peril involved. It is one of the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance, and it serves as the essential backbone for an unbreakable mind. Without courage, our wisdom remains theoretical, our justice goes unenforced, and our temperance is never tested. It is the virtue that allows all the others to manifest in the real world, especially when we are confronted with life's inevitable trials and pressures. To understand this in its purest form, we can look to the historical figure of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became a legendary exemplar of Stoic principle. Cato lived during the tumultuous fall of the Roman Republic, a time of civil war and rising dictatorship under Julius Caesar. He saw the foundational liberties of the Republic being systematically dismantled. While many of his contemporaries compromised or switched allegiances for power and safety, Cato stood unwavering in his opposition to Caesar's autocracy. He did this not out of a thirst for glory or a foolish belief that he could not be harmed, but because he believed it was his moral duty to defend the Republic's ideals. He was under no illusion about the danger. He knew Caesar's power was immense and his own life was at risk. Yet, he consistently chose to speak the truth, to block unconstitutional actions, and to stand for his principles, even when it meant political isolation and ultimately his own death. His courage was not the absence of fear, but the profound conviction that some things are more important than safety, and that living with a compromised character was a fate worse than dying for a just cause. His final act, choosing to take his own life rather than be pardoned by a dictator he saw as illegitimate, was, in his view, the ultimate expression of his freedom and his commitment to virtue. This ancient example might seem distant, but the same structural dynamic of courage plays out in our modern lives every single day. Consider a professional scenario you might recognize. You're in a meeting where a senior leader proposes a course of action that you know is ethically questionable. Perhaps it cuts corners on safety, misleads a client, or unfairly disadvantages a colleague. There is a palpable pressure in the room to go along, to not make waves. You feel the fear of being ostracized, of damaging your career prospects, of being labeled as difficult. The reckless act might be to stand up and angrily accuse everyone of being corrupt, an action that creates chaos but isn't necessarily effective. The courageous act, the Stoic act, is different. It is to pause, to steady your nerves, and to speak with clarity and respect. You might say, "I understand the pressure we're under to deliver this result, but I have some concerns about the long-term implications of this approach for our integrity and for our team. Could we explore an alternative that achieves our goal while aligning with our company's stated values?" This is not an act of aggression, it is an act of moral bravery. It is doing the right thing because it is the right thing, even when your voice shakes. You are prioritizing the virtue of justice and the good of the whole over your own personal comfort. This same pattern applies to personal situations. Having a difficult but necessary conversation with a family member about their well-being, setting a firm boundary with a friend who consistently oversteps, or admitting a significant mistake you've made and taking full responsibility for it. In every case, courage is the bridge between knowing what is right and actually doing it. The beautiful and empowering truth about this kind of courage is that it is not a fixed character trait you either have or you don't. It is far more like a muscle. It grows stronger through consistent, deliberate use. You do not build the capacity to run a marathon by attempting it on your first day. You start with a single mile. In the same way, you build your courage muscle not by waiting for one monumental, life-defining moment, but by seeking out and embracing the small, daily opportunities to practice it. This could mean finally asking that question in a meeting you've been too shy to speak in. It could be voicing a dissenting opinion in a casual conversation with friends when you hear an unfair generalization. It could be the simple act of apologizing sincerely when you know you are in the wrong. Each of these small acts is a repetition in the gym of your character. Each time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you are depositing strength into your inner citadel, making it that much more resilient for the day when a truly great challenge arrives. So let's bring this from the philosophical to the immediate and personal. Look at the landscape of your own life as it is right now. Where is that quiet, persistent whisper calling you to be braver? Is it in your professional life, where you need to advocate for an idea you believe in or challenge a process that isn't working? Is it in a relationship where you need to be vulnerable and have an honest conversation that you've been avoiding? Or is it a more internal form of courage, like the bravery required to finally confront a limiting belief you've held about yourself for years? Identify one specific, tangible situation this week where you feel the familiar pull of fear, but also the deeper pull of what you know to be right. What would it look like to take one small, courageous step in that direction? The path to an unbreakable mind is paved with these conscious, daily choices to act with moral bravery, proving to yourself again and again that you are stronger than your fears. An unbreakable mind is a wise mind, one that discerns the true nature of things beneath the layers of assumption, emotion, and narrative we so often drape over them. This is the Stoic virtue of phronsis, a word often translated as wisdom, but which more accurately means practical judgment or prudence. It is wisdom with its sleeves rolled up, the kind that operates not in the quiet of a library but in the noisy, messy arena of daily life. Phronsis is the ability to see a situation for what it actually is, stripped bare of the drama and the personal baggage we attach to it, and then to choose the most virtuous and effective course of action. It's the difference between reacting to a vague feeling of threat and responding to the specific, factual components of a challenge. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius constantly drilled himself in this exact skill. In his private journal, now known as his Meditations, he gives himself this powerful instruction: strip away the legend that encrusts it. He wasn't talking about an ancient myth. He was talking about the stories we tell ourselves about the events of our own lives. That critical email from a colleague isn't just text on a screen. We instantly weave a legend around it, a story of disrespect, of hidden agendas, of our own inadequacy. Wisdom is the act of stopping, taking a mental step back, and deliberately stripping that legend away to see the bare event itself. What are the facts and only the facts? The email contained specific feedback on a project. That is the reality. Everything else, the tone you perceived, the intention you assumed, the future consequences you fear, is a story, a legend you have created. Your judgment, your emotional reaction, and your subsequent actions will be profoundly different depending on whether you are responding to the raw fact or to the elaborate legend you've built on top of it. Let's bring this to life with a detailed example of navigating a complex interpersonal conflict with this kind of practical wisdom. Imagine you are working closely with a partner on a significant project, perhaps a joint business venture or a major community event. Over time, you notice they have become increasingly distant, missing deadlines and offering vague, non-committal responses to your messages. The initial, unexamined impression, the legend you might create, could sound like this: they are deliberately sabotaging this project. They've lost respect for me and my ideas. They're probably talking behind my back, and this entire partnership is a humiliating failure. If you assent to that judgment, your emotional state will be one of betrayal and anger, and your actions will likely be confrontational and accusatory, which will almost certainly escalate the conflict and destroy the partnership. Now let's apply Stoic wisdom. You consciously strip away the legend. You set aside the assumptions about their intentions and the catastrophic predictions about the future. You focus only on the observable facts. Their communication has become less frequent and less specific, and 2 deadlines have been missed. This is the clear, undistorted reality you have to work with. From this place of clarity, you can now engage your practical judgment. Instead of firing off an angry text, you consider the long-term consequences of your actions. You want to preserve the relationship if possible and salvage the project, so you choose a course of action aligned with the virtues of justice and courage. You request a calm, face-to-face conversation. When you meet, you don't lead with accusation. You lead with observation and curiosity, stating the facts as you see them without the loaded emotional narrative. I've noticed the last few deadlines have been challenging to meet, and I'm getting the sense you might be feeling overwhelmed. I want to understand what's going on so we can figure this out together. This approach, grounded in factual observation rather than emotional interpretation, opens a door for dialogue instead of slamming it shut. It is entirely possible that your partner reveals they are dealing with a serious family illness or a deep personal crisis they were hesitant to share. Your wise judgment, by focusing on facts and long-term harmony, not only de-escalates the situation but also strengthens the trust in your relationship. This is Francis in action. It is the guiding intelligence that navigates the complexities of human interaction with clarity, compassion, and effectiveness. Cultivating this kind of wisdom is not a passive process. It is an active pursuit built on 3 core pillars. The first is study. This means actively seeking out knowledge, not just about Stoicism, but about human nature, psychology, and the world around you. Read widely, listen to diverse perspectives, and fill your mind with frameworks for understanding how things work. The second pillar is reflection. This is where knowledge is processed and integrated into judgment. It's the practice of the evening review, where you look back on your day and ask not just what happened, but how you judged what happened. Were your assessments accurate? Were your actions aligned with your principles? This daily audit sharpens your discernment. The third and perhaps most humbling pillar is learning from your mistakes. Wisdom is often forged in the fires of our own errors. A decision that leads to a poor outcome is not a failure, it is a data point. The wise person analyzes that data point with ruthless honesty, asking, what false judgment did I make? What legend did I believe? What could I see more clearly next time? This turns every stumble into a stepping stone toward greater clarity. To connect this directly to your own life, bring to mind a recent decision you made, whether large or small. It could be a financial choice, a reaction in a conversation, or even what you chose to focus on during a free hour. Now, gently examine the judgment that led to that decision. What was the story or the legend you were telling yourself in that moment? Were you acting on clear, objective facts, or were you influenced by a fleeting emotion, a past prejudice, or a fear of a future outcome? Now consider an alternative. If you were to apply the Stoic principle of stripping away the legend, what would the situation have looked like in its bare essence? And with that clearer vision, what might a wiser, more grounded judgment have been? This act of retrospective analysis isn't about self-criticism. It's the very exercise that trains your mind to see more clearly the next time, steadily building the practical wisdom that is the anchor of a truly unbreakable character. This journey toward an unbreakable mind might seem like a deeply personal, even solitary pursuit. Yet, one of the most profound truths of Stoicism is that our mental resilience is inextricably linked to our relationship with others. Building an inner citadel is not an act of selfish isolation. It is, in fact, a project rooted in a powerful and expansive sense of justice. The Stoics considered justice to be one of the four cardinal virtues, and they defined it in a beautifully comprehensive way. For them, justice was not merely about following laws or rules. It was the unwavering commitment to act for the common good and to treat every person you encounter with fundamental fairness. And this concept of fairness, crucially, extends inward as well. It includes the duty to treat yourself with the same respect and equity you would offer anyone else. A mind plagued by self-criticism, by harsh internal judgments, and by a refusal to grant itself grace is a mind that is fundamentally unjust to its own operator. How can you be strong for others if you are constantly undermining the very foundation of your own being? This practice of justice, both outward and inward, is a direct contributor to a tranquil mind. When you act unjustly, when you speak unfairly of a colleague, when you cheat on a commitment, when you harbor secret resentments, you introduce a toxin into your own psyche. You create internal conflict, guilt, and a dissonance that erodes your peace from the inside. Conversely, when you consciously choose to act with fairness, to fulfill your social duties, and to treat yourself with compassion, you align yourself with virtue. This alignment produces a profound sense of integrity. There is no inner turmoil, no nagging voice of shame, because your actions are in harmony with your principles. Your mind becomes a place of order, not chaos. This interconnected view of justice is grounded in the core Stoic belief of cosmopolitanism, the idea that we are all citizens of a single, universal community. The philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on this, reminding himself of the shared bond of humanity. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." We are not isolated islands. We are part of a vast, interconnected social organism. An injustice committed against another is, in the Stoic view, an injury to the whole, and therefore an injury to yourself. Your peace is tied to the well-being of the community you are part of. When you contribute to its health through just actions, you are, in a very real sense, strengthening the environment that supports your own mental stability. To translate this grand philosophical ideal into a tangible, daily practice, consider this simple but powerful application. Make a conscious, deliberate effort to perform one small, completely anonymous act of kindness each day. This is justice in its pure, unadorned form. There is no external reward, no social recognition, no expectation of reciprocity. The act is its own reward, reinforcing the virtue within your character. It could be as simple as paying for the coffee of the person behind you in the drive-through line. It might be leaving a genuinely positive and encouraging comment on a stranger's online post whose work you admire. Perhaps it's tidying up a common area at your workplace without anyone knowing it was you. The specific action is less important than the intention behind it, the conscious choice to contribute a small measure of good to the universal hive without any need for personal credit. This practice does two things simultaneously. Outwardly, it sends a tiny ripple of fairness and goodwill into the world. Inwardly, it is a repetition for your character. Every time you perform such an act, you are strengthening the neural pathway associated with selfless virtue. You are telling yourself, through action, that your worth is not dependent on external validation, but on the integrity of your own conduct. This builds a quiet, unshakable confidence. It fortifies your resolve because you know your strength is not for you alone. it is a resource you can share, which paradoxically makes it grow even stronger. So, as you move through your day, hold this question in your mind as a practical guide. How can you practice greater fairness both to others and to yourself in your interactions today? When you are in a conversation, does the other person feel heard and treated with respect? When you make a mistake, do you offer yourself the same understanding you would extend to a dear friend? This balanced application of justice, looking both outward to the world and inward to your own soul, is what transforms the pursuit of mental invincibility from a solitary quest into a harmonious contribution, building a resilience that is both personally empowering and universally beneficial. Are the things you want most in life actually serving your peace of mind, or are they secretly sabotaging it? This is the critical question at the heart of the next Stoic discipline, a practice that directly targets the very source of much of our mental turmoil. It's called the discipline of desire, and its goal is deceptively simple yet profoundly life-altering: to train ourselves to want only what is virtuous and, most importantly, what is within our sphere of control. Think of your desires as the sails on a ship. When they are aligned with the wind, with nature and reason, they propel you forward with purpose and tranquility. But when they are set against it, when you desperately crave things that are not up to you, you are fighting a constant, exhausting battle against the elements, leaving you battered, weary, and perpetually off course. The core insight here, articulated with stunning clarity by the former slave-turned-philosopher Epictetus, is that a vast portion of our suffering is self-inflicted. It doesn't come from the world itself, but from our passionate, unchecked craving for things that the world may or may not provide. In his essential handbook, The Enchiridion, he lays it out plainly. Freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of men's desires, but by the removal of desire. He isn't advocating for a joyless, desireless existence. He is pointing to a monumental shift in focus. The problem isn't wanting. The problem is what we are wanting, and the emotional investment we place in obtaining it. When we chain our happiness to external outcomes, that promotion, that perfect relationship, that level of wealth or social status, we hand over the keys to our inner peace to a universe that is famously unpredictable and indifferent to our personal wishes. We move from being the captains of our own soul to being desperate petitioners at the court of fortune, forever hoping for a favorable verdict and forever devastated when it doesn't come. One of the most pervasive and draining examples of this in our modern world is the desire for social validation. We live in an economy of attention where likes, shares, and positive comments have become a kind of social currency. It feels good to be seen and approved of. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The trouble begins when our sense of self-worth becomes hooked on it. When we post a photo and then anxiously check for the notification bubble, our emotional state is now being dictated by the actions of others, actions that are completely outside our control. We have, in that moment, outsourced our well-being. If the likes pour in, we feel a fleeting high. If they don't, we feel a pang of rejection, of insignificance. We have given thousands of strangers, most of whom we will never meet, the power to influence our inner weather. Now, imagine the sheer, unburdened freedom of releasing that particular hook. Imagine sharing a piece of your work or a moment from your life simply because you deemed it authentic or valuable, and then letting it go completely, utterly detached from the public's reaction. Your worth was never in their validation to begin with. It resides in your own character, your intentions, and your actions, all of which are firmly within your command. This is the liberation the discipline of desire offers. To navigate this in daily life, the Stoics provided a brilliant cognitive tool, a way of categorizing the objects of our desire to keep our priorities straight. They called the things we typically chase money, reputation, health, even the lives of our loved ones, preferred indifference. This is a term that often causes confusion, but it's a cornerstone of Stoic psychology. Indifferent does not mean unimportant or that we shouldn't care. It means that these things, in and of themselves, are neither good nor bad for our moral character, which is the only true good. They are preferred because it is completely rational and natural to prefer health over sickness, wealth over poverty, and praise over criticism. We should absolutely work towards them and enjoy them when they are present. The crucial shift happens when we stop classifying them as necessary for our happiness. We pursue a promotion because it is a preferred thing that aligns with our professional growth, but we do not stake our entire self-esteem on getting it. We desire a long and healthy life for our loved ones, but we understand that their mortality is not within our ultimate control. By mentally reframing a desired external as a preferred indifferent, we engage with the world from a place of empowered choice rather than desperate need. The practice, then, is one of conscious noting and reframing. The next time you feel that sharp pull of desire for a particular outcome in a negotiation, for a specific reaction from a person you admire, for a material possession you believe will complete you, pause and name it. Acknowledge the desire, then apply the label, "This is a preferred indifferent." Say it to yourself, "Getting this job is a preferred indifferent. Their good opinion of me is a preferred indifferent. This new car is a preferred indifferent." This simple act of categorization creates immediate psychological distance. It gently reminds you that while you may prefer this outcome, your virtue, your reason, and your capacity for peace do not depend on it. You can still work tirelessly for it, but you do so with a light heart, free from the crushing weight of attachment. Your effort becomes the good, not the outcome. This transforms ambition from a source of anxiety into a field for the expression of excellence. So, let's bring this directly into the realm of your own experience. Look inward and identify one specific desire that has been occupying your mental space, one whose fulfillment feels intensely important to you. Perhaps it's the desire for a particular person to reciprocate your feelings. Maybe it's the desire to hit a specific financial target by a certain date. It could be the desire for public recognition for a project you've poured your heart into. Now, with clear-eyed honesty, ask yourself this pivotal question: is the fulfillment of this desire entirely within my hands? Can you make someone love you? Can you guarantee a specific market outcome? Can you force the world to applaud your work? The answer, of course, is no. The actions of others, the fluctuations of the economy, the opinions of the public, these are the classic domains of externals. Now consider the weight, the mental and emotional energy you are currently investing in this desire. What would it feel like to consciously practice releasing your attachment to the specific outcome while still committing fully to the virtuous actions within your control? You cannot make someone love you, but you can be a more loving, present, and authentic person. You cannot guarantee a financial windfall, but you can be disciplined, diligent, and wise with the resources you have. This is the essence of the discipline of desire. It is not a call to inaction, but a call to right action. Action that is focused on the quality of your own character and effort, leaving the results to nature. This realignment is what severs the link between your wants and your suffering, building a mind that is unbreakable because it wants only what it can truly have, a virtuous life lived with purpose right here and now. The Stoic focuses on the quality of their effort, not the outcome. This is the essence of the discipline of action, a fundamental practice that shifts the entire locus of your self-worth and mental stability from the unpredictable world of results to the sovereign territory of your own intentions and conduct. While the discipline of desire trains you to want only what is virtuous and within your control, the discipline of action trains you to act virtuously with the resources and circumstances immediately available to you, and then to release your grip on the consequences. It is the ultimate antidote to the performance anxiety and fear of failure that plague so much of modern life. This principle finds its voice in the private writings of Marcus Aurelius, who constantly reminded himself to focus on the task itself, not the reward it might bring. He wrote, "Let the part of you that directs be undisturbed by the sensations in the soft or hard. Let it not mingle with them, but let it circumscribe itself, and confine those affections to their own parts." In simpler terms, he was telling himself to let his rational, guiding mind do its work without being hijacked by the feelings of pleasure from success or the pain from failure. The work is one thing, the result is another. Your job is the work. The discipline of action involves pouring your entire being into the process, planning meticulously, acting with integrity, and giving your absolute best while simultaneously holding the outcome with an open hand. This is not a call to apathy or low standards. On the contrary, it is a demand for the highest standard of all, the standard of virtuous effort. It's the difference between a craftsman who obsesses over every detail of a piece of furniture, ensuring every joint is tight and every surface is smooth because that is what his art demands, and a different craftsman who rushes the work, cutting corners, because he is only focused on the payment he will receive at the end. The first artisan is practicing the Stoic discipline of action. He finds his satisfaction and his pride in the excellence of the work itself. The payment, while preferred, is an external that does not define the quality of his effort. The second artisan has chained his sense of accomplishment to an external reward, and if that reward is less than expected or doesn't come at all, his entire endeavor feels like a failure, leaving him bitter and resentful. This distinction is the key to understanding how this discipline liberates us from anxiety. Anxiety about results is almost always a function of attachment. We become attached to a specific future, getting the promotion, winning the approval, closing the deal. This attachment turns the future into a threat because it might not happen. Our mind races through catastrophic scenarios of what will happen if we fail, and this mental turbulence sabotages our ability to be fully present and effective in the current moment. The discipline of action cuts this chain. It says your only responsibility is to do the right thing as well as you can right now. The future is not yours to command. Consider a modern scenario that many will find familiar. You have a major presentation that could lead to a significant promotion. The discipline of action does not mean you approach this half-heartedly. Quite the opposite, you prepare with immense diligence, you research thoroughly, you anticipate questions, you practice your delivery until it is polished and clear. You ensure your intentions are virtuous, you aim to inform, to contribute, to serve the team's goals, not merely to impress for personal gain. You walk into that room and you deliver your presentation with focus, clarity, and integrity. You have done your best with the time, knowledge, and skills you have. This is where your job ends. The discipline of action is then to walk out of that room and mentally detach from the result. Whether you get the promotion or not is now in the hands of factors beyond your control. The company's budget, the opinions of the decision makers, the performance of other candidates. If you have truly internalized this discipline, your sense of accomplishment is not deferred until the decision is announced. It was achieved the moment you completed your presentation to the best of your ability. The promotion becomes a preferred, indifferent, welcome if it comes, but not necessary for you to feel that you were successful. This mindset is incredibly empowering. It means you are never truly defeated by external circumstances. A failed business venture is not a verdict on your worth if you acted with courage, wisdom, and justice throughout the process. A rejected manuscript is not a judgment on your talent if you wrote with honesty and poured your soul into the work. The outcome is feedback from the universe, data to learn from, but it is not the measure of your virtue. Your effort is. This is what frees the artist to create without being paralyzed by the critic, the entrepreneur to innovate without being crushed by the fear of market rejection, and the individual to live fully without the constant dread of not being enough. To truly integrate this, let's turn the lens inward on a past experience. Cast your mind back and recall a specific time when you genuinely did your best. You prepared, you worked hard, you acted with good intentions, and yet the outcome was still a failure. Perhaps it was a project that didn't meet its goals despite your tireless effort, a relationship you couldn't save despite your heartfelt attempts, or an exam you studied for intensely but still didn't pass. How did you view that event at the time? Chances are you likely categorized the entire experience as a failure because the external result you wanted didn't materialize. You may have felt shame, frustration, or a sense of personal inadequacy. Now, re-examine that same memory through the lens of the Stoic discipline of action. Separate the quality of your effort from the outcome. Acknowledge the parts that were within your control, your preparation, your dedication, your intentions. Can you see now that those elements were a success? The fact that the external result didn't align with your hopes does not negate the integrity and strength you demonstrated in the attempt. This reframing doesn't change the past, but it completely transforms its emotional residue. That event is no longer a story of personal failure. It becomes a story of you doing your best with what you had in a challenging situation. It becomes evidence of your resilience and commitment, not your inadequacy. This shift in perspective is what allows you to get back up after a fall, to try again without the heavy baggage of past disappointments, because you know that your worth is in the trying itself, a quality that no external outcome can ever take away from you. You could leave life right now. Let that statement settle for a moment, not as a threat or a source of fear, but as a simple, undeniable fact of existence. This is the heart of Memento Mori, the ancient Stoic practice of remembering death. It's a concept that, when misunderstood, can seem grim and depressing, a macabre obsession with the end. But when embraced with a Stoic mindset, it reveals itself as one of the most powerful and liberating tools ever devised for cultivating an unbreakable mind. Memento Mori is not about dying, it's about learning how to live. It is the ultimate tool to intensify your focus, amplify your gratitude, and anchor you firmly in the only reality you will ever truly possess, the present moment. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a master of capturing life's paradoxes, wrote with piercing clarity about how we squander our most precious resource. He observed, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested. But then he delivers the devastating blow that gets to the core of our modern distraction. We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. Life is long if you know how to use it. His point is that we lose life not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small, unconscious increments. We lose it to the 30 minutes spent scrolling through a social media feed in a daze, to the hour lost to worrying about a future meeting that may not even unfold as we fear, to the entire evening sacrificed to resentment over a minor slight from the past. We are like people standing on the shore, believing we have all the time in the world, while the tide of our life silently, steadily recedes with every wave. Memento Mori is the practice that wakes us up from this trance of postponement. It is the mental alarm clock that rings and asks the most clarifying question you will ever confront. Is this how I would choose to spend this moment if I knew it was one of my last? This question acts like a filter for the soul, instantly separating the essential from the trivial. The argument you're holding onto with a loved one suddenly seems like a catastrophic waste of precious seconds. The desire to impress a critical colleague evaporates, replaced by a focus on the integrity of your own work. The petty worry about what to wear or what to say loses all its power. Remembering that your time is finite and profoundly uncertain does not create a frantic bucket list frenzy. Instead, it instills a deep, calm urgency. It's the difference between being a tourist in your own life, casually glancing at the sights and always thinking you can come back later, and being an ardent pilgrim, knowing this is your one and only journey and determined to be fully present for every single step. This practice builds a mind that is truly invincible to the two great thieves of peace, past regrets and future anxieties. When you are fully immersed in the present, the past becomes a collection of lessons learned, not a prison of guilt and resentment. The future transforms from a source of dread into a landscape of potential that you will meet with the resources you cultivate now. A mind anchored in the now cannot be ambushed by ghosts from yesterday or monsters from tomorrow. It stands firm in the only reality that exists, and in that reality, you always have the capacity to choose a virtuous response. To weave this profound awareness into the fabric of your daily life, consider a simple but transformative technological adaptation of this ancient practice. Set a periodic, silent reminder on your phone to go off once or twice throughout your day. Don't label it with anything ominous, just let it be a gentle chime. When it sounds wherever you are, whatever you are doing, let it be your cue to pause for just 10 seconds. In that pause, pull yourself out of the automatic flow of your actions and ask the Memento Mori question with sincere curiosity. If this were my last hour, would I be doing this? Would I be having this conversation? Would I be thinking this thought? The answer will not always be no. Sometimes you will be reading to your child, or working on a meaningful project, or sharing a laugh with a friend, and the answer will be a resounding, joyful yes, filling you with a renewed sense of purpose and gratitude for that very activity. Other times you might be lost in complaint or distraction, and the question will serve as a gentle, internal course correction, reminding you to redirect your attention to what truly matters. This isn't about creating a life of constant, dramatic intensity, but about infusing your ordinary moments with extraordinary presence. It's about washing the dishes with full attention to the sensation of warm water, listening to a friend with your whole being instead of just planning your response, and doing your work not for the future reward, but for the dignity and focus you can bring to the task itself right now. So let's bring this from a philosophical concept to a deeply personal reflection. Imagine for a moment that you received a definitive, unavoidable diagnosis, not necessarily of imminent death, but of a sharply limited time frame. Perhaps you have 1 year left fully healthy and aware. Look around at your life as it is today. What would immediately fall away? What petty concerns, what grudges, what fears about what others think would instantly seem ridiculous and insignificant? And what would rise to the surface with undeniable clarity? What conversations would you finally have? What relationships would you nurture with fierce intention? What simple, everyday moments, a morning cup of coffee, a walk in the park, the feeling of the sun on your skin, would become incandescent with beauty and meaning? This is not a morbid exercise. This is an act of reclaiming your life from the automatic pilot of habit and societal expectation. The priorities that emerge in that imagined scenario are your true priorities. They are the compass pointing toward your authentic life. Memento Mori doesn't ask you to wait for a terminal diagnosis to start living that life. It gives you the power to start living it today, right now, with the profound understanding that this moment and every moment that follows is a gift too precious to waste. Of all the emotions that can storm the fortress of our mind, anger is perhaps the most destructive, a raging fire that consumes our peace, clouds our judgment, and often leaves a trail of damage in its wake. It feels powerful and righteous in the moment, but it is ultimately a reaction that hands control of our inner state over to someone else's actions. The Stoics, ever the practical psychologists, had a very clear and insightful view of this powerful emotion. They did not see anger as a fundamental part of human nature or a necessary force for change. Instead, they diagnosed it as a temporary form of madness, a brief insanity that arises from a specific and correctable error in our thinking. Seneca, who wrote an entire volume titled On Anger, described it with stunning precision, calling it a brief insanity. The error, the faulty judgment at its core, is the unexamined belief that we have been deliberately and unjustly wronged. We receive an impression, a cutting remark, a perceived injustice, a frustrating delay, and in a flash, without pausing for verification, our mind assents to the worst possible interpretation. We judge the event as a personal affront, an intentional attack on our dignity or our plans. It is this judgment, this story we tell ourselves about being a victim of malice, that ignites the inner fire of anger. The event itself is often neutral. It is our heated narrative about the event that causes the suffering. Seneca's advice for dealing with this initial spark is incredibly practical and remains as relevant today as it was in ancient Rome. His first and most crucial rule is to delay your reaction. When you feel that first hot surge of anger, your primary task is to create a gap, however small, between the impulse and the action. Do not speak, do not act, do not hit send on that fiery email. Simply pause. He advised to force a calm expression on your face, to lower your voice, and to slow your movements. This isn't about being inauthentic. It's about using the body to tame the mind. By consciously slowing your external physical reactions, you send a powerful signal back to your brain that there is no emergency, beginning to cool the neurological fires before they rage out of control. His second piece of counsel is to actively practice seeing the situation from the other person's perspective. This is not about excusing bad behavior, but about draining the personal venom from the event. Perhaps the person who snapped at you is operating on 2 hours of sleep because they were caring for a sick child. Maybe the driver who cut you off simply didn't see you and isn't, in fact, a sworn enemy dedicated to ruining your morning. Often, people's actions are a reflection of their own internal struggles, their own ignorance or pain, and have very little to do with you personally. By consciously shifting your perspective, you replace the judgment of "they are wronging me" with the more measured and likely more accurate assessment of "they are acting out of their own confusion or hardship." This removes the sense of personal persecution that fuels the anger. Let's apply this to a scenario almost everyone has experienced: road rage. You're driving calmly, and another car suddenly swerves into your lane without signaling, forcing you to slam on your brakes. The initial, raw impression is one of shock and violation. The automatic, unstoic reaction is to assent immediately to the judgment. That idiot did that on purpose. They have no respect for anyone. They deserve to be punished. This judgment triggers the physical response: adrenaline, a clenched jaw, the urge to honk, yell, or even pursue them. Now let's walk through the Stoic alternative. The event happens. You feel the jolt of fear and the heat of anger start to rise. You remember Seneca's advice. First, you delay. You take a deep breath instead of leaning on the horn. you consciously relax your grip on the steering wheel. This creates a 2-second gap. In that gap, you engage the second strategy, perspective shift. You consider possibilities. Maybe they are lost and are desperately looking for their exit. Perhaps they are a new driver and made a panicked mistake. It's possible they are rushing to an emergency I know nothing about. None of these thoughts excuse the dangerous driving, but they completely reframe the driver from a malicious villain to a fallible human being, probably scared themselves. Your judgment shifts from "I have been wronged" to "a dangerous mistake was made." This new judgment does not trigger the same biochemical cascade of rage. You feel caution, perhaps even a flicker of compassion, but the destructive fire of anger is extinguished. You then focus on what is within your control, your own safe driving. You create space, you stay alert, and you continue your journey with your peace of mind intact. You have just demonstrated that an external event, no matter how provocative, does not have the power to dictate your inner state. Mastering this process is a non-negotiable component of an unbreakable mind because anger is the very antithesis of reason. It is a surrender of your highest faculty, your capacity for clear, logical thought, to a primal, chaotic impulse. Every time you successfully navigate a trigger without succumbing to rage, you are proving to yourself that you are the master of your own inner world. You are strengthening the neural pathways of patience and perspective, making it easier to choose the calm, assessed response the next time. To truly integrate this wisdom, bring to mind a situation in your own life that is a reliable trigger for your anger. It might be a specific relative who knows how to push your buttons, a particular type of bureaucratic incompetence, or a recurring frustration at work. Now play it out in your mind, but this time insert the Stoic pause. Imagine the trigger occurring, feeling the initial surge, and then consciously creating that space. What would it look like to delay your reaction for just 60 seconds? What alternative perspectives could you genuinely entertain about why the other person is acting that way? And from that calmer, more reasoned place, what would a constructive and virtuous response sound like? One that addresses the issue without setting your own mind on fire. In the Stoic view, there is no such thing as an obstacle, only a different path. This is the heart of the Stoic Twist, a radical reframing of reality that transforms every seeming roadblock from a dead end into a doorway for character development. It is the principle of turning obstacles upside down, where a hindrance is not something to be lamented, but an opportunity to be seized, a specific chance to practice and embody a particular virtue. This is not about putting a naive, positive spin on difficult situations. It is a profound recognition that virtue, the very substance of an unbreakable mind, is not forged in times of ease and comfort. It is sculpted through friction, tested in adversity, and revealed in our response to things that do not go our way. The obstacle, therefore, is not an interruption of your journey. It has become the very terrain upon which your journey progresses. It is the raw material provided by life for you to build a stronger, wiser, and more resilient self. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who faced endless political betrayals, military revolts, and personal loss, was a master of this practice. In his private meditations, he constantly turned his irritations into training grounds. He wrote about encountering annoying, ungrateful, or even malicious people, and instead of seeing them as nuisances to be avoided, he viewed them as a gift. He framed them as perfect, divinely sent opportunities to practice the virtue of patience. He saw them as a gym for his tolerance, a chance to strengthen his ability to remain calm and just in the face of provocation. In one passage, he advises himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. And so none of them can hurt me, no one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. This is the twist in action. The other person's behavior is not the point, your response is the entire curriculum. They are not ruining your day, they are providing the day's lesson plan in advanced character building. Let's translate this ancient insight into a modern professional scenario that many will find painfully familiar. Imagine you have been working for months on a major project. You have poured your heart and soul into it, working late nights and early mornings. You have presented your final proposal to the leadership team, and you are met with enthusiasm. Then, a week later, you are called into a meeting and told that due to sudden budget cuts, the entire project has been cancelled. The initial gut-level reaction is one of devastation, anger, and a profound sense of wasted effort. The conventional narrative is one of failure and frustration, but now let's apply the Stoic twist. We take this obstacle, the cancelled project, and we deliberately turn it upside down to see what opportunities for virtue are hidden on the other side. First, this is a supreme opportunity to practice the virtue of adaptability. The plan you were attached to is gone. The future you envisioned has dissolved. Can you release your grip on that specific outcome and pivot? Can you look at the situation with fresh eyes and ask, given this new reality, what is the next right move? This flexibility is a hallmark of mental strength, and the cancellation has just given you a chance to train it. Second, this obstacle is a chance to practice humility and detachment from outcomes. You did your best work, you presented it well, and it was still not enough to overcome external circumstances. This is a powerful lesson that your worth is not determined by the success or failure of any single project. Your value lies in the quality of your effort and your integrity throughout the process, which no budget cut can ever take from you. Releasing the need for a specific result is a monumental step toward inner freedom. Third, and perhaps most practically, this setback forces a period of reflection and new direction. With the old path closed, you are now free to explore new ones you might never have considered. Perhaps this cancellation pushes you to develop a more streamlined, cost-effective version of the idea. Maybe it opens up mental space to work on a different, more impactful project that you had been ignoring. The obstacle of the cancellation has literally cleared the deck, creating space for something new and potentially better to emerge. This cognitive reframing is a genuine superpower for mental resilience. It takes the narrative of victimhood, why is this happening to me, and replaces it with the narrative of agency, what is this situation making possible for me? It fundamentally changes your relationship with reality from one of resistance to one of collaboration. You stop seeing the universe as an adversary throwing problems in your path and start seeing it as a wise, if sometimes harsh, personal trainer, constantly presenting you with the exact challenges you need to grow stronger. This shift does not eliminate the difficulty or the initial sting of disappointment, but it does eliminate the secondary suffering, the helplessness, the resentment, the feeling of being stuck. It transforms you from a passive recipient of fortune's blows into an active participant in your own development. To truly harness this power, you must move it from a fascinating idea into a daily practice. So let's make it immediate and personal. Look directly at your life as it is right now. Identify one current, tangible obstacle you are facing. It doesn't have to be a monumental crisis. It could be a difficult relationship with a coworker, a financial constraint, a health niggle, or even a persistent lack of motivation. Now, take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone, and for this one obstacle, list 3 specific ways it could be used to strengthen your character. If your obstacle is the difficult coworker, your list might look like this. 1. This person is training my patience and my ability to listen without immediately reacting. 2. They are giving me a chance to practice clear, firm, and compassionate boundary setting. 3. They are teaching me to find my own internal validation, rather than seeking approval or pleasant interactions from everyone around me. If your obstacle is a financial constraint, your list could be: 1. This limitation is forcing me to practice creativity and resourcefulness in how I live and spend. 2. It is strengthening my gratitude for the non-material riches in my life, like my relationships and my health. 3. It is building my discipline and long-term planning skills as I work toward greater stability. The moment you complete this exercise, you have performed the Stoic Twist. You have taken a problem and actively converted it into a curriculum. The obstacle has not disappeared, but its meaning has been utterly transformed. It is no longer a brick wall, it is a climbing wall, and you have just identified the specific handholds you can use to pull yourself higher, building an unbreakable mind with every single challenge you meet. The gratitude that Stoicism teaches is something far more robust and transformative than the simple practice of positive thinking. While focusing on the good is undoubtedly helpful, the Stoic approach goes much deeper, moving beyond a mere list of pleasant things to a profound philosophical recognition of the benefits we continuously receive from nature, from fate, and from the people around us. It is an active, clear-eyed acknowledgement of what is already sufficient in our lives. This isn't about ignoring hardship or pretending everything is perfect. It is about anchoring your mind in the bedrock of what you truly have, right now, which fortifies you against the turbulent winds of desire for what you lack. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life in slavery and understood privation intimately, framed this with his characteristic bluntness. He advised, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This rejoicing is not a passive feeling, it is a disciplined act of attention. It is the conscious decision to find your joy and your sense of adequacy not in the endless pursuit of more, but in the full appreciation of enough. This shifts the entire foundation of your contentment from the unstable ground of external acquisitions to the solid ground of internal recognition. A powerful and practical way to cultivate this deep-seated attitude is through the simple ritual of a nightly gratitude journal. But to align it with Stoic principles, we must refine the practice slightly. Instead of only listing external blessings like a good meal or a sunny day, which are wonderful but fleeting, we also turn our gaze inward. Each evening, as you reflect, make a specific point to note down at least one thing about your own character or your own actions from that day for which you are thankful. This is a crucial pivot. It moves gratitude from being something that happens to you to something you actively cultivate within you. For instance, you might write today, "I am grateful for the patience I managed to exercise during that frustratingly long meeting," or "I am thankful for the courage it took to speak up and voice my dissenting opinion in a respectful way," or even, "I am grateful for the self-discipline I showed in choosing to go for a walk instead of scrolling mindlessly on my phone." This practice does something remarkable. It directly builds your self-respect and your sense of agency. You are no longer just a recipient of fortune's favors. You are an active participant in creating a virtuous life, and you are taking time to acknowledge and appreciate your own progress. This internal focus is what makes Stoic gratitude such a potent tool for building an unbreakable mind. When your sense of worth is tied to your own character, to your growing patience, your integrity, your kindness, it becomes something that no external circumstance can easily diminish. Losing a job cannot take away your discipline. A critical comment cannot erase your courage. A failed project cannot negate the perseverance you demonstrated throughout. This practice systematically reduces the corrosive desire for more status, more possessions, more approval, because you are constantly reinforcing the truth that you are already adequate, already equipped with the inner resources that truly matter. The relentless chase for the next thing loses its power over you when you are genuinely, deeply content with who you are and what you have in this very moment. This fosters a resilient sense of adequacy that is not dependent on your bank account, your social media following, or your title at work. It is a sufficiency rooted in your humanity itself. So, as we bring this practice from the page into the heart, let's pause for a personal reflection. Looking back on this day, not at the objects you own or the external validations you received, but at the person you were able to be, what stands out? Beyond any material possessions, what specific aspects of your own character or the quality of your relationships are you most genuinely grateful for today? Was it the moment of clarity when you chose understanding over anger, the warmth of a conversation where you felt truly seen and heard, the quiet determination you found to complete a difficult task? Identifying these non-material treasures is the first step in building a contentment that is truly unshakable. Who embodies the mental strength you aspire to when you are faced with a difficult choice, a moment of fear, or a surge of anger, whose example comes to mind as a guiding light? This is not a casual question. It is the foundation of a powerful Stoic practice that involves consciously selecting a mental role model, an archetype of wisdom and resilience often referred to as the sage. It is crucial to understand that this figure is not meant to be a perfect, infallible idol. No such human has ever existed. The point is not to find someone who never erred, but to find someone whose overall character, especially in the face of adversity, provides a clear and inspiring standard against which you can measure your own judgments and actions. It is about having a North Star for your moral compass, a consistent reference point that helps you navigate when your own internal weather is cloudy and unclear. The great Roman philosopher Seneca frequently turned to the example of Cato the Younger, a man whose unwavering commitment to his principles in the chaotic final days of the Roman Republic made him a legend. Seneca did not pretend Cato was flawless, but he saw in him a towering example of courage and consistency. He wrote in his letters, "I shall choose Cato." A mind like his, when it has been assigned to a man, is a gift from the gods. When it is imitated, it is a gift from the man himself. This distinction is vital. Cato's character was a unique gift, but the decision to try and emulate his integrity, his resolve, his unshakable sense of duty, that is a choice available to every single one of us. It is an act of self-creation, of consciously deciding what kind of person you wish to become, and then using a real, historical example as a template for that becoming. This practice transforms abstract philosophy into a living, breathing dialogue. You are no longer just trying to be good according to a vague ideal. You are asking yourself, in a very specific and personal way, how a person you deeply admire would handle the exact situation you are in. To bring this into your own life, begin by consciously choosing a figure who resonates with you. This could be a historical person like Marcus Aurelius, whose private journals reveal a man constantly striving for virtue amid the immense burdens of power. It could be someone like Eleanor Roosevelt, who channeled profound personal pain into a life of relentless advocacy and compassion. It might be a contemporary figure in your field known for their unyielding integrity, or even a family member who has demonstrated extraordinary resilience. The key is that this person embodies a specific quality you wish to cultivate more fully in yourself. Perhaps it is their unwavering calm, their moral courage, their boundless curiosity, or their profound sense of justice. Once you have this figure in mind, you engage in a simple but profoundly effective mental exercise. When you find yourself at a crossroads, especially in a challenging moment, you pause and you ask the question, what would my role model do here? Let's say your chosen figure is Nelson Mandela, and you are dealing with a colleague who has been consistently undermining you. Your initial, raw impulse might be to retaliate, to gossip, to seek revenge, but then you invoke your role model. You think of Mandela's 27 years in prison and his subsequent choice to pursue reconciliation and nation building over bitterness and retribution. You ask, what would Mandela do? The answer that arises will almost certainly not be to engage in petty office politics. It might be to seek a direct, honest conversation with the person, to try and understand their perspective, to act with a dignity that refuses to be pulled down to a lower level. This question does not magically eliminate the difficulty or the hurt, but it provides an external benchmark that elevates your thinking. It pulls you out of your own reactive, emotional mind and into a more reasoned, principled space. It is like having a wise and trusted mentor whispering in your ear at the very moment you need guidance most. This practice is so effective because it bypasses the abstract and makes virtue concrete. It is one thing to tell yourself, I should be courageous. It is another, far more powerful thing to ask, how would my grandmother, who survived that war with such grace, handle this fear? The image of her strength provides a tangible model to step into. This is not about losing your own identity. It is about consciously shaping it by aligning yourself with the finest qualities you can find in others. You are not trying to become a carbon copy of your role model. You are integrating their most admirable traits into the unique person that you are, strengthening your own character by standing on the shoulders of giants. So let's make this personal and immediate. Look within and ask yourself, who is your Stoic role model? It doesn't have to be a famous philosopher. It can be anyone, real or even literary, whose character speaks to you. Now go a layer deeper. What is the one specific quality they possess that you feel is most absent or underdeveloped in your own life right now? Is it the serene acceptance of a Marcus Aurelius? The sharp, uncompromising integrity of a Cotto? The compassionate action of a Mr. Rogers? Name that quality, and then, for the next week, make it your practice to bring that specific quality to mind in your daily interactions. When you are about to lose your patience in a long line, ask how your role model would embody patience. When you are tempted to take an easy but dishonest shortcut, ask how they would uphold their integrity. This conscious daily invocation of a higher standard is how you begin to build that quality within yourself, brick by brick, steadily forging the unbreakable mind you are striving to create. We have all encountered people who test our patience, individuals whose very presence can feel like a direct assault on our peace of mind. It might be the coworker who consistently dismisses your ideas in meetings, the family member who knows exactly which buttons to push, or the stranger whose sheer rudeness in a public space sends a jolt of anger through your system. In these moments, it is tempting to believe that our tranquility is being stolen from us, that this difficult person is the active agent of our distress. The Stoic approach to such encounters offers a radically different and empowering perspective, one that shifts the locus of control firmly back into our own hands. It begins with a fundamental understanding that difficult people act as they do not out of some innate evil, but from their own flawed judgments, their own ignorance of what is truly good. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was surrounded by scheming politicians and demanding supplicants, constantly reminded himself of this truth. In his private meditations, he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." This is not a cynical view of humanity. It is a compassionate and realistic one. It reframes the other person's behavior from a personal attack to a symptom of their own internal confusion. They are not operating from a place of enlightened wisdom but from a place of error, much like someone who is physically ill might lash out in their discomfort. When you can see the difficult person as someone who is, in a sense, unwell in their soul, your own emotional reaction begins to change. The sting of personal insult lessens, replaced by a more detached, almost diagnostic perspective. This leads to the core Stoic insight in social dynamics. Our peace is not and cannot be dependent on the behavior of others. It is dependent solely on our own judgments about their behavior. The event itself, the critical comment, the dismissive gesture, is an external. It is a thing that has happened, but the story we tell ourselves about that event, the judgment we stamp upon it, is our own creation and exists entirely within our inner citadel. If we judge the comment as a devastating blow to our worth, we will feel devastated. If we judge it as the misguided opinion of a confused individual, we can observe it with curiosity rather than absorb it as a truth. The other person's action is the initial spark, but it is the fuel of our own assent that creates the inferno of our irritation. To manage this fuel, to prevent our own minds from igniting, we need a practical strategy that is both simple to understand and profoundly challenging to implement. One of the most powerful techniques, directly aligned with Stoic principles, is the practice of mentally wishing well to the person you find challenging. This is not about being a doormat or condoning bad behavior. It is an internal, private exercise designed specifically to disarm your own irritation and reclaim your emotional freedom. The next time you interact with this person and feel that familiar surge of annoyance, pause for just a moment in the privacy of your own mind and consciously wish for them to be happy, healthy, and free from suffering. You might silently think, "I wish for you to find peace," or "May you be free from the confusion that causes you to act this way." The effect of this practice is almost alchemical. The emotion of anger or resentment requires a certain narrative to sustain itself, a story of us versus them, of victim and villain. When you actively wish well to the villain, you shatter that narrative. You are no longer building a case against them in your internal courtroom. You are, instead, extending a form of compassion. This immediately de-escalates your own physiological response, lowering your heart rate and calming your nervous system. It creates a psychological gap between their action and your reaction, and in that gap, your reason can reassert itself. You stop being a reactive animal and become a conscious human being, choosing your response rather than being hijacked by your emotions. This consistent practice builds what can only be called social resilience. It is the mental and emotional armor that allows you to move through a world filled with difficult people without letting them dictate your inner state. Every time you successfully wish well to someone who irritates you, you are performing a repetition for your character. You are strengthening the neural pathway associated with patience and empathy, and weakening the one associated with reactive anger. Over time, you become like a tree that bends in a strong wind but does not break. The difficult behaviors of others may rustle your leaves, but your trunk, your core equanimity remains unshaken. This resilience is not a cold, isolated fortitude. It actually enhances your ability to interact effectively. When you are not consumed by your own irritation, you can listen more clearly, assess the situation more objectively, and respond with a calm firmness that is far more likely to de-escalate a conflict or resolve an issue than any angry retort could ever be. To truly integrate this wisdom, let's move it from theory into the tangible reality of your own life. Bring to mind a specific person you currently find challenging. It could be someone you see daily or someone from your past whose memory still stirs up frustration. Now, make a quiet commitment to yourself. For the next week, every time you think of this person or interact with them, you will perform this internal act of wishing them well. It doesn't have to be a grand, emotional gesture. A simple, silent thought is enough. Observe what happens. Does the mental charge around this person begin to change? Does the tightness in your chest loosen? Do you find yourself feeling a little less captive to their behavior? This is the practice of building your unbreakable social self, one conscious, compassionate thought at a time. Your attention is your most precious resource. It is the very currency of your mental life, and what you choose to feed it directly shapes the architecture of your mind. Every piece of information you consume, every notification you acknowledge, and every emotional stimulus you engage with is a deposit into your consciousness, either building up your inner citadel or quietly eroding its walls. The Stoics understood this principle with profound clarity long before the age of digital distraction. They called it the discipline of assent, but it begins even before judgment with the simple act of guarding your impressions. An impression is anything that enters your awareness through your senses: a sight, a sound, a piece of news, a conversation. The philosopher Epictetus offered timeless advice on this front, teaching his students that while they couldn't always control the initial impression, they had absolute sovereignty over what happened next. He famously said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." But to even have the space to revoke that estimate, you first need to create a gap, and that gap is forged by being fiercely selective about what you allow into your mental space in the first place. Epictetus used the analogy of a festival. You go to a crowded fair, and there are all sorts of noises and commotions around you. People are jostling, vendors are shouting, music is playing. His instruction was not to try and stop the festival, which would be impossible, but to realize that you are under no obligation to be disturbed by the noise. You can acknowledge it and let it pass by without granting it entry into your inner world. You can choose not to assent to the impression that this external noise requires your emotional engagement. Translating this ancient wisdom into our modern context reveals its stunning relevance. The festival that Epictetus described is now a constant, 24-hour digital carnival happening in the palm of your hand. Your smartphone is a portal to an endless stream of impressions, curated highlights from the lives of others, breaking news alerts about distant crises, angry political debates, and an algorithm designed to hijack your attention by triggering your deepest fears and desires. Each ping, each scroll, each auto-playing video is a new impression vying for your assent, demanding that you judge it as important, upsetting, or urgent. When you wake up and immediately reach for your phone, you are essentially inviting the entire noisy festival into the sacred, quiet space of your morning mind before you've even had a chance to fortify your own thoughts. The practical application of this Stoic principle, then, is a form of conscious curation. It is the modern equivalent of guarding your impressions, and it might look like a deliberate digital declutter. This isn't about rejecting technology, but about reclaiming your role as the gatekeeper of your own mind. Start by auditing the sources of information that flow into your life. Look at your social media feeds not as neutral platforms, but as environments. Do the accounts you follow leave you feeling anxious, envious, or angry? Or do they educate, inspire, and connect you in a meaningful way? You have the power to mute, unfollow, and curate that environment until it serves your tranquility rather than sabotages it. The same goes for news consumption. Staying informed is a civic duty, but being perpetually outraged and terrified by headlines you cannot influence is a voluntary surrender of your peace. Consider designating specific, limited times to check reputable news sources, rather than allowing a fire hose of breaking news alerts to dictate your emotional state throughout the day. This act of curation is a profound declaration of self-respect. It is you stating that your mind is a sacred space, not a public landfill. Every time you choose to close a distracting app, turn off a non-essential notification, or log out for an hour, you are performing a repetition for your focus. You are strengthening your ability to direct your attention intentionally, rather than having it pulled and fractured by external demands. This directly builds a more focused and unbreakable mind, because a mind that can control its attention is a mind that cannot be easily controlled by anything else. It is the difference between being a leaf blown by every digital wind and being the tree firmly rooted, whose leaves may rustle but whose core attention remains directed toward its own growth and purpose. So, to bring this principle from a philosophical idea into a tangible change, let's make it personal. Look honestly at the information and distraction streams in your own life. What is one specific source of input that you know, in your heart, consistently disrupts your peace of mind? Is it a particular social media platform that leaves you feeling inadequate? Is it a cable news channel that fuels a sense of helpless anger? Is it the endless stream of work emails that blurs the boundary between your professional and personal life, preventing you from ever truly disconnecting? Identify that one source. Now, what would it look like to consciously limit your exposure to it, even in a small way, for the next week? Perhaps you delete the app from your phone and only check it on your computer for 15 minutes in the evening. Maybe you turn off all non-essential push notifications, reclaiming the right to check your phone on your own terms, not when it demands your attention. This single, deliberate act of limitation is not a deprivation. It is an investment in the clarity and calm of your own mind, protecting the resource that makes every other practice of resilience possible. The only constant is change, and the Stoic mind finds its deepest peace not by fighting this truth, but by learning to rest within its flow. This is the practice of contemplating impermanence, a deliberate meditation on the transient nature of every single thing that makes up our world, our careers, our health, the relationships we hold dear, and life itself. When we resist this fundamental reality, we live in a state of quiet tension, clinging desperately to sand as it slips through our fingers. But when we train ourselves to deeply internalize the fact that nothing lasts, a profound shift occurs. Our attachments loosen, our fears of loss diminish, and we begin to appreciate the present moment with an intensity that is otherwise impossible. This wisdom is ancient, captured perfectly by the pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus, whose ideas were wholeheartedly embraced by the Stoics. He famously said that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man. This is not just a poetic observation about flowing water, it is a precise metaphor for the entirety of existence. You are that river. Your body, composed of cells that are constantly dying and being replaced, is in a state of perpetual flux. Your mind, a stream of thoughts and impressions, is never static. Your career is a series of projects, roles, and challenges that arise and then dissolve. Your most cherished relationship is an ever-evolving dance between two people who are themselves changing. To expect any of this to remain fixed is to argue with a law of the universe, a battle you are guaranteed to lose. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius returned to this theme again and again in his private writings, using it as a tool to ground himself amid the immense and fleeting power he wielded. He wrote, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. Existence flows past us like a river. The infinity ahead and behind is lost in the eternal present." He wasn't being morbid, he was being a realist. He was reminding himself that the political victory he celebrated today would be forgotten tomorrow, that the insult he received would fade into irrelevance, and that the very empire he ruled was a temporary arrangement in the vast sweep of time. This perspective is the ultimate antidote to both arrogance and despair. It cuts the ego down to size, reminding us of our small but beautiful part in a much larger, ever-unfolding process. To truly make this concept felt, not just understood, we can engage in a simple but powerful meditation. Find a quiet moment and bring to mind the life cycle of a single leaf. Picture it in the spring, a tiny, vibrant green bud bursting forth from a branch, full of potential and life. See it mature through the summer, providing shade and performing its quiet work of photosynthesis. Then watch as autumn arrives and its color transforms into a brilliant, fiery display before it eventually loosens its grip and flutters to the ground, where it will decompose and return its nutrients to the soil, feeding the tree for the next cycle of growth. The leaf did not cling to the branch, screaming in protest at the coming of fall. It participated fully in every stage of its existence, and its letting go was as natural and necessary as its budding. You can do the same exercise by observing a busy city street from a window. Watch the people, the cars, the flow of activity. See how every individual has their own destination, their own story, their own moment on this stage before moving on. The scene is never the same from one minute to the next. This constant flux is not chaos. It is the natural order of things. By regularly contemplating impermanence in this way, you are not cultivating indifference. You are cultivating a richer, more poignant engagement with life. Knowing that a beautiful moment is fleeting makes you savor it more deeply. Understanding that a difficult period is temporary gives you the endurance to see it through. This acceptance of flux is a cornerstone of mental stability because it aligns your mind with reality itself. A mind that is aligned with reality is a mind that is not perpetually shocked, disappointed, or terrified by the way things are. It is a mind that can adapt, that can let go, and that can find a steady peace amidst the endless, beautiful, and inevitable dance of change. To bring this home, think back on a recent change in your own life that initially caused you stress or resistance. Perhaps it was a restructuring at work that shifted your responsibilities, the end of a familiar weekly routine, or even your children growing older and needing you less. In the moment, it likely felt like a disruption, an unwelcome deviation from the way things were supposed to be. Now, reconsider that same event through the lens of impermanence. That previous structure at work was always going to change. No business model lasts forever. Your children were always going to grow up. That is the entire point and promise of parenting. The change was not an error in the system. It was the system operating exactly as intended. How might accepting the inevitable nature of that transition from the very beginning have altered your experience? Would the anxiety have been as sharp? Would the resistance have been as strong? Or could you have met the shift with a calmer heart, recognizing it as simply the next turn in the river's path, and perhaps even curiosity about what new landscapes it might reveal? In our hyper-connected world, moments of true quiet have become increasingly rare and for many, even uncomfortable. We fill the empty spaces with podcasts during our commute, background television while we cook, and an endless scroll through social media during any spare moment. This constant noise isn't just a habit. It often feels like a shield against a subtle, gnawing fear of what we might hear if everything went silent, the unresolved thoughts, the lingering worries, the simple, stark reality of our own company. Yet, the Stoics understood that this very silence we often flee from is not a void to be filled, but a fertile ground for cultivating an unbreakable mind. They practiced a form of chosen solitude, not as a punishment or a retreat from society, but as an active, disciplined training ground for self-examination and for strengthening the one relationship that will last your entire life, the relationship you have with yourself. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in his profound letters to his friend Lucilius, placed immense value on this practice of turning inward. He wrote, "The primary sign of a well-ordered mind is the ability to remain in one place and linger in one's own company." He wasn't talking about merely being physically alone. He was describing the capacity to sit with your own thoughts without distraction, to converse with yourself, to interrogate your own judgments and motivations. This is the essence of strengthening your inner dialogue. It's in these quiet chambers of the mind that you can process the events of the day, question your automatic reactions, and reinforce the principles you wish to live by. This Stoic solitude is fundamentally different from the pain of loneliness. Loneliness is a feeling of lack, a sadness stemming from a perceived absence of connection with others. It is a passive state that often feels imposed upon us. Solitude, in the Stoic sense, is the exact opposite. It is a chosen state of richness, an active engagement with your own inner world. It is a deliberate withdrawal from the crowd, not because you dislike people, but because you recognize the necessity of periodically checking in with the one person whose judgments ultimately determine your peace. It is in solitude that you build the self-reliance that prevents you from becoming emotionally dependent on the approval or presence of others. You learn to generate your own validation, your own clarity, and your own sense of purpose from within. A powerful and practical way to reintroduce this ancient practice into your modern life is to schedule it with the same seriousness you would a business meeting or a doctor's appointment. Designate a specific, regular time, even if it's just 20 minutes initially, as your period of intentional solitude. The crucial element here is that it must be device-free. This means no phone, no laptop, no television, no podcasts. The goal is to eliminate external input completely, creating a vacuum that your own mind is forced to fill. You might simply sit in a comfortable chair and observe your thoughts as they arise without judgment, like clouds passing in the sky. You could use this time for deep, reflective reading of a philosophical text, not for information absorption, but for dialogue with the author, pausing after each paragraph to consider how the idea applies to your life. Another profound practice is to take a walk in nature without any headphones, allowing the rhythm of your steps and the sounds of the natural world to become a backdrop for your internal reflections. This consistent practice of intentional quiet builds two essential pillars of an unbreakable mind. First, it builds profound self-reliance. When you regularly spend quality time with yourself, you become less rattled by external opinions and more confident in your own inner compass. You learn that you are, in fact, excellent company. You discover resources of strength, creativity, and problem-solving within you that you never knew existed because they were always drowned out by the noise. Second, it generates unparalleled clarity. In the silence, the mental chatter begins to settle, much like sediment in a muddy pond. The important thoughts, the core values, and the truly pressing issues gradually rise to the surface, distinct and clear. Solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable in the hustle of the day often present themselves with quiet simplicity when the background static is turned off. This is where you gain the perspective to distinguish your own true desires from the desires society has implanted in you, and to see the path ahead with a steadier, more focused gaze. So let's bring this from a scheduled practice to a moment of immediate possibility. What profound insights, what quiet solutions, or what long-forgotten dreams might gently surface into your awareness if you were to gift yourself just 30 minutes of uninterrupted, device-free solitude today? simply sitting with the sound of your own breath and the company of your own thoughts. The architecture of an unbreakable mind is not constructed in the heat of a crisis. Its foundations are laid in the quiet, deliberate moments of the morning, long before the world makes its first demand on your attention. The first hours after you wake are a sacred space, a blank slate upon which you can write the script for your entire day. This is a principle the ancient Stoics understood intimately. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who bore the weight of an empire on his shoulders, did not begin his day by diving into administrative chaos. He began it in the stillness of his own mind, with a series of written reflections that we now know as his meditations. He used this time not to plan his schedule, but to prepare his character, to fortify his inner citadel against the inevitable challenges and temptations that lay ahead. A Stoic morning ritual is not another item on a productivity checklist designed to help you accomplish more. It is the exact opposite. It is a practice of mental preparation designed to ensure that no matter what you accomplish, you do so with equanimity, virtue, and an unshakable sense of purpose. It is about calibrating your inner compass before you step out into a world that will constantly try to pull you off course. Imagine starting your day not in a reactive state, jerked awake by a blaring alarm and immediately flooded with the demands of emails and news alerts, but from a place of profound centering. A simple, structured 10-minute practice can create this shift. You might begin by sitting in a quiet space, taking a few deep, conscious breaths to anchor yourself in the present moment. Then engage in a brief moment of negative visualization, the Premeditatio Malorum we discussed earlier. For just a minute or two, vividly imagine a potential challenge you might face today. Perhaps it's a difficult conversation with a colleague, a project deadline that feels overwhelming, or simply being stuck in traffic. Don't dwell on it with anxiety, but walk through it calmly in your mind. See yourself handling it with patience, wisdom, and resilience. This act is like a fire drill for the soul. It inoculates you against the shock of the event should it actually occur, and it proves to you in advance that you have the capacity to endure it. Following this, you can move to setting your intentions for the day, but frame them not around tasks but around virtues. Instead of thinking, "I need to finish that report," you set an intention like, "Today, I will practice diligence and focus in my work." Instead of, "I have to get through that meeting," you might choose, "I will approach my interactions with fairness and a willingness to listen." This subtle shift moves your focus from external outcomes, which you cannot fully control, to the quality of your own actions and character, which you absolutely can. Finally, take a moment to remind yourself of the nature of the world you are about to re-enter. As Marcus Aurelius did, you can acknowledge that you will likely encounter people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, and dishonest. But see this not as a prediction of doom, but as a strategic preparation. By anticipating this, you remove the element of surprise and outrage. You can decide in advance that you will not be harmed by them, because your peace does not depend on their behavior, but on your own judgments. You are, in effect, putting on your mental armor before heading into battle. This entire ritual is a conscious investment in your inner stability. When you then stand up and begin your day, you do so not as a leaf ready to be blown by every wind of fortune, but as a deeply rooted tree. The frustrating commute becomes a test of your patience that you were prepared for. The critical feedback becomes an opportunity to practice humility and wisdom that you intentionally sought. The unexpected setback is no longer a derailment, but simply part of the landscape you knew you might have to traverse. This practice builds a proactive resilience that carries you through the entire day with a steadier hand and a calmer heart. The true power of this ritual lies in its flexibility. It is a template, not a rigid command. The goal is not to mimic Marcus Aurelius exactly, but to capture the spirit of his preparation and adapt it to your own life and temperament. Perhaps your 10 minutes includes a minute of silence followed by reading a single powerful Stoic passage, and then writing down one virtue you wish to embody. Maybe it involves a short walk outside, using the rhythm of your steps to contemplate the day ahead with a Stoic lens. The specific components matter less than the consistent, daily commitment to shaping your mind before the world tries to shape it for you. The invitation is to become the architect of your own mornings, and in doing so, to lay one more solid brick in the unbreakable mind you are building day by day. As the sun sets and the day's final tasks are complete, a profound opportunity for growth quietly presents itself. The Stoics saw the transition from day to night not merely as a time for rest, but as a classroom where the day's events became the curriculum for building a stronger character. This is the practice of the evening examination, a deliberate and gentle ritual of self-reflection that turns the raw material of your daily life into polished wisdom. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in his profound letters to his friend Lucilius, beautifully described this daily habit. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." Can you picture that scene? The world is quiet, the distractions have faded, and in that sacred stillness you sit down for a brief, honest conversation with the most important person in your life, yourself. This is not an exercise in self-criticism or a mental courtroom where you stand as both the accused and the harsh judge. That approach only leads to guilt and discouragement, which are enemies of growth. The true spirit of the Stoic evening review is one of gentle, objective assessment, as if you were a wise and compassionate mentor reviewing the performance of a valued student. Your goal is not to punish yourself for your mistakes, but to understand their cause, and not just to pat yourself on the back for your successes, but to identify the virtues that made them possible so you can call upon them again. It is a process of mining your own experience for the gold of self-knowledge. To make this ancient practice immediately accessible, you can structure it around 3 simple, powerful questions that you ask yourself each night. The first question is this: what did I do well today? Where did I act in alignment with my principles? This is not about inflating your ego, it is about reinforcing positive behavior. Perhaps you managed to hold your tongue in a heated discussion when you would have normally snapped. That is a moment of practicing the virtue of temperance. Maybe you took on a difficult task you had been avoiding, demonstrating courage. Or perhaps you offered a kind word to a colleague who seemed stressed, an act of justice and kindness. By consciously identifying these moments, you are strengthening the neural pathways associated with virtuous action. You are telling your brain, this is the person I am becoming. Take note. The second question requires a bit more courage, but approached with the right mindset, it becomes the source of your greatest growth. Where did I fall short? Where did my actions or judgments stray from the person I wish to be? The key here is to drop all defensiveness and look at the event with calm objectivity. Let's say you lost your patience with a family member over a trivial matter. Instead of thinking, I'm a horrible person, you simply observe the facts. I reacted with impatience and raised my voice when my child spilled their drink. Then you go a layer deeper and investigate the faulty judgment that likely triggered the reaction. What was the story you told yourself in that moment? Perhaps it was, this is a disaster and it's going to make us late, or they never pay attention. By identifying that initial automatic judgment, you are not condemning yourself. You are locating the specific point of failure in your thinking. This is like a mechanic finding the faulty part in an engine. It's not a judgment on the whole car. It's the first step toward a repair. The third and final question is the bridge that leads from reflection to progress. How can I improve tomorrow based on what I learned from today? What is one small, specific step I can take? This transforms the review from a passive analysis into an active plan for growth. Using the previous example, your plan for improvement might be, tomorrow, when I feel a surge of frustration, I will take one deep breath before I speak, or I will remind myself that accidents happen and that my relationship with my child is more important than a clean floor or being on time. This turns a moment of failure into a setup for future success. The immense power of this nightly habit is that it solidifies learning. Without reflection, our experiences wash over us and then fade away, leaving little lasting change. The evening examination is the process of taking those experiences and consciously encoding them into your character. It is the mental equivalent of a craftsman honing their tools after a day's work, ensuring they are sharper and more effective for the next project. Each night you do this, you are extracting the lesson from the event, integrating it into your understanding, and preparing yourself to meet a similar challenge with more wisdom and resilience the next time. This consistent, daily practice of learning from yourself steadily builds what can only be called an invincible character, not because you are perfect, but because you are in a state of perpetual, gentle, and effective growth. You are no longer repeating the same mistakes on autopilot. You are consciously editing the script of your life, one evening at a time. The transformation this brings is not dramatic or sudden, but it is deep and lasting. Over weeks and months, you will find yourself becoming more patient, more courageous, and more mindful, not because you are forcing it, but because you are consistently learning from your own life and making tiny, incremental adjustments. The classroom of the day is always in session, and the evening review is how you ensure you graduate with honors. So, the invitation is simple, and it begins not with a lifetime commitment, but with a single night. Will you commit to trying this 3-question review for just one evening? Find a quiet moment before you sleep, put aside your devices, and have that honest, kind, and insightful conversation with yourself. You might be surprised by what you learn, and you will certainly be taking a definitive step toward the unbreakable mind you are building. Your unbreakable mind is not an isolated fortress on a lonely hill. It is a living, breathing part of a vast, rational, and profoundly interconnected universe. This expansive perspective is the heart of the Stoic concept of cosmopolitanism, a term that might sound modern but originates from the ancient Greek words for world and citizen. To the Stoics, you are not merely a citizen of your town or your nation. You are, first and foremost, a citizen of the entire cosmos, bound by invisible threads of reason and shared destiny to every other human being and to nature itself. The philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius returned to this truth again and again in his private meditations, using it as an anchor in a sea of political turmoil and personal trial. He wrote with a sense of awe and belonging, "Meditate often on the interconnectedness and mutual interdependence of all things in the universe, for in a way, all things are mutually woven together and therefore have a fondness for each other." He saw the cosmos as a single, living entity, and each of us as a distinct yet inseparable part of that greater whole, like individual limbs on a single body. This is not a vague, poetic sentiment. It is a philosophical lens that, when adopted, fundamentally rewires your emotional responses to the challenges of daily life, particularly those involving other people. When you genuinely internalize this worldview, it begins to dissolve the very foundations of feelings like isolation, resentment, and the pain of petty conflicts. Consider the corrosive emotion of resentment, that slow, burning anger we hold toward someone we believe has wronged us. From a narrow, self-centered perspective, the other person is an adversary, a separate agent who has deliberately acted against our interests. This judgment creates a wall between us and them, and we stand on our side of that wall, nursing our grievance. But the cosmopolitan view invites you to step back and see a much larger picture. That person who offended you is also a citizen of the same world. They too are acting out of their own set of flawed judgments, their own struggles, their own pursuit of what they mistakenly believe is good, just as you sometimes do. They are a product of the same universal nature that produced you. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it reframes it from a personal attack to a universal phenomenon, a manifestation of human error and ignorance. The feeling of isolation, of being alone in your struggles, also melts away under this cosmic light. When you feel overwhelmed by a personal failure or a private sorrow, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing you are the only one suffering in this way. Yet, the Stoic Cosmopolitan Perspective reminds you that you are part of a human family numbering in the billions, each member navigating their own labyrinth of challenges, joys, and losses. Your pain, while uniquely yours, is a thread in a vast shared tapestry of human experience. You are not an isolated island of suffering. You are a wave in a great ocean, connected to every other wave by the deep water beneath. This realization breeds not self-pity, but a profound sense of solidarity and compassion, which is a far more resilient state of mind than lonely despair. To actively cultivate this mindset, you can engage in a simple but transformative mental practice the next time you feel a sharp sense of separation or grievance toward another person. In that heated moment when you feel the walls going up, consciously pause and perform an act of perspective expansion. Imagine a map of the world and place 2 dots on it, one for you and one for the person you are in conflict with. See how infinitesimally small those dots are on the scale of the planet. Then zoom out further to the scale of the solar system, the galaxy, the cosmos. From this vantage point, both of you are citizens of the same tiny, fragile, pale blue dot, hurtling through the immensity of space. You share the same atmosphere, the same hopes for safety and happiness for your children, the same fundamental human needs. Now, actively look for 3 things you might share with this person beyond the immediate conflict. Perhaps you both know what it is to feel fear. You both have experienced loss. You both wake up each morning with a desire for your day to go well. This exercise is not about surrendering your Chinese letter or condoning bad behavior. It is about reclaiming your own peace by dismantling the mental construction of otherness that is causing your distress. It is about recognizing their humanity in all its flawed beauty and in doing so strengthening your own. So, let's bring this cosmic philosophy down to the ground of your own life. Bring to mind a current personal conflict, a friction with someone that has been occupying your mental energy. It could be a disagreement with a neighbor, a tension with a relative, or a rivalry with a coworker. Now, apply the lens of cosmopolitanism. How does seeing yourself and this other person as fellow citizens of the same world, as temporary passengers on the same planetary journey, change the texture of this conflict? Does the issue itself seem smaller when viewed against the backdrop of a shared human destiny? Does the anger feel less personal when you consider that they, like you, are simply trying to navigate life with the limited understanding and resources they possess? This shift in perspective does not necessarily resolve the practical issue, but it resolves the inner war you are waging against reality, freeing up immense mental energy and opening the door to more creative, compassionate, and ultimately more effective solutions. So after this long journey through the many practices and principles of Stoicism, from the dichotomy of control to the discipline of desire, from the premeditation of evils to the cultivation of courage, we arrive at the ultimate destination, the final answer to the question of what is this all for. The Stoics called this the summum bonum, the highest good, and they gave it a specific name. Eudaimonia. This ancient Greek word is often translated as happiness, but that translation can be deeply misleading in our modern context. We tend to think of happiness as a fleeting emotional state, a feeling of pleasure or contentment that comes and goes based on what happens to us: getting a promotion, receiving a compliment, enjoying a good meal. This kind of happiness is entirely dependent on externals, on the fickle favors of fortune, and is therefore as stable as a leaf in a storm. Eudaimonia is something else entirely. It is best understood as a flourishing life, a life of profound human fulfillment. It is a state of being in which you are truly thriving, not because your circumstances are perfect, but because your character is. It is the deep, abiding sense of purpose, peace, and resilience that comes from knowing you are living in full alignment with your highest nature, which for the Stoics is a nature of reason and virtue. This is the critical distinction that changes everything. Mental invincibility, that unbreakable core we've been exploring, is not the final target you are aiming for. It is not the trophy you win at the end of the race. Rather, it is a powerful and welcome byproduct, a natural side effect of a life lived virtuously. When you consistently choose reason over reactive emotion, when you act with justice even when it's difficult, when you meet every obstacle as fuel for your growth, you are not just building a stronger mind, you are actively constructing a flourishing life. The strength and tranquility you feel are the direct results of that construction project. They are the evidence that you are on the right path, the internal confirmation that you are moving in agreement with nature. The founders of Stoicism were remarkably clear and unified on this point. Zeno, the school's originator, defined the goal of life as living in agreement with nature. His successor, Chrysippus, refined this further, calling it living in accordance with experience of what happens by nature, and he famously stated that the chief good is a virtuous flow of life. This virtuous flow is a beautiful image. It's not a single, monumental achievement, but a continuous, smooth current of right action, right judgment, and right intention. It's the feeling of your decisions and your character flowing in harmony with the rational structure of the universe itself, rather than crashing against it in a futile struggle to control what was never yours to command. This ultimate goal of eudaimonia is what gives context and purpose to every single practice we have discussed. The dichotomy of control is not just a mental trick to reduce anxiety. It is the fundamental sorting mechanism that allows you to direct your energy exclusively toward the cultivation of virtue, the only true good. The practice of cognitive distance isn't merely a stress management tool. It is the essential skill that prevents your rational mind from being hijacked by passions, ensuring your judgments remain clear and aligned with nature. Amor Fati, the love of fate, is not passive resignation. It is the active embrace of the very raw material the universe provides for you to practice your virtues. Voluntary discomfort is the gym where your resilience muscle is built. Negative visualization is the drill that prepares you for loss and amplifies your gratitude for the present. The discipline of desire and action reorients your entire life from chasing outcomes to cherishing effort. The cardinal virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance are the four pillars that hold up the entire structure of a flourishing life. Memento Mori is the poignant reminder that gives urgency and preciousness to this entire endeavor. When you view your journey through this lens, it transforms from a collection of isolated self-help techniques into a coherent, unified path of profound human development. You are not just collecting tools for a toolbox, you are apprenticing yourself to the art of living well. Every challenge becomes a lesson in this art, every interaction a chance to practice your craft. The point is not to achieve a state of perfect, emotionless roboticism, but to become a fully realized human being, capable of experiencing the full range of human emotion without being enslaved by it, able to engage deeply with the world while maintaining an unshakable inner citadel of virtue. This is a continuous progression, not a finite race with a finish line. There is no moment where you officially achieve eudaimonia and then get to stop. It is a dynamic state of being that you nurture and recommit to with every rising sun, with every decision, no matter how small. It is found in the quality of your effort, the integrity of your actions, and the clarity of your judgments, day after day after day. So, as we near the conclusion of our exploration, let's bring this grand philosophical ideal down to the most personal level possible. Take a quiet moment to reflect on your own life and your own understanding. What does living in agreement with nature truly mean for you in the context of your unique circumstances, your relationships, and your work? Does it mean accepting the natural flow of change with more grace rather than resisting it? Does it mean aligning your actions more consistently with your core values, even when no one is watching? Does it mean using your innate capacity for reason to navigate conflicts with wisdom instead of anger? Your answer to this question is your own personal compass, pointing you toward your own unique expression of a flourishing life, the ultimate reward for building a mind that nothing can break. And so we reach the end of our journey together, a path that has taken us from the foundational distinction between what is and is not within our power, all the way to the ultimate goal of a flourishing life. We've seen that an unbreakable mind is not a mythical state reserved for a chosen few, but a practical reality forged in the daily fires of our own choices. It is built each time we pause before reacting, choosing our judgment over a raw impression. It is strengthened every moment we practice Amor Fati, embracing an obstacle as the very fuel for our growth rather than a barrier to our happiness. It is solidified through the consistent application of the cardinal virtues: wisdom to see things clearly, courage to act rightly despite fear, justice in our dealings with others and ourselves, and temperance in our desires. This is the profound work of a lifetime, a continuous practice of returning to these principles, not as abstract ideas, but as living guides for navigating the beautiful, chaotic, and unpredictable reality of being human. This is the accessible, proven path for ordinary people to cultivate an extraordinary kind of resilience, a quiet strength that does not shout but endures, that does not crumble under pressure but adapts and grows stronger. In the end, the entire Stoic endeavor can be distilled into a single, breathtaking truth about your own nature, perfectly captured by the former slave who became one of its greatest teachers, Epictetus. He offered this final, unconquerable promise: no one is stronger than you. That inner power is the one thing that is invincible if you guard it well, if you do not surrender it yourself. Let that statement sink in. Your inner power, your capacity for reasoned choice, your sovereign will, this is the one thing in the entire universe that can be truly unconquerable, but only if you do not surrender it. You surrender it when you hand over your peace to an external event, when you allow another person's behavior to dictate your emotional state, or when you chain your self-worth to an outcome you cannot control. The entire practice of Stoicism is the discipline of guarding that power, of refusing to surrender it, of remembering that it has always been and will always be yours. So, as we part ways, I want to leave you with one final, personal reflection to carry into your day. Look back over the landscape of principles and practices we've explored. From the dichotomy of control to the evening review, from negative visualization to the practice of justice, which one single Stoic exercise resonates most deeply with you right now, in this specific chapter of your life? Which one feels like the most natural or perhaps the most necessary place for you to begin? Is it the simple act of pausing to ask, "Is this within my control?" when you feel stress rising? Is it the commitment to a nightly examination of your day? Or is it the courageous decision to practice voluntary discomfort, to build your inner citadel brick by brick? Identify that one practice. Make a quiet commitment to yourself to start integrating it, not as a monumental life overhaul, but as a single, focused experiment for the next week. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single, conscious step. Now, this is not the end of the conversation, but merely the beginning of your own. I would be truly honored to hear your story. In the comments below, tell me about your experiences, which Stoic idea has already made a difference for you. What challenges are you facing, and how do you think these principles can help? Your insights and questions create a community of practice, a digital Stoa where we can all learn from one another. And if you found this journey valuable, if you're ready to continue building a life of resilience, purpose, and profound inner strength, please subscribe to the channel. This is just the start. There is so much more to explore together on the path to living a good life. Thank you for your time, your attention, and most of all, for your commitment to doing the most important work there is, the work of building an unbreakable